This is Adam Graham from Pretty Much the Present, bringing you a week of old-time radio podcasts. These episodes were originally released back in 2011, and we're releasing them here pretty much as is, with only some extraneous bits such as the opening from all of the episodes after the first episode removed. Because these are old, it should be noted that any offers or promotions mentioned in the episode may not be valid unless they're currently mentioned on the Great Detectives website. Here now is a week of old-time radio detective podcast. Welcome to the Great Detectives of Old Time Radio. From Boise, Idaho, this is your host, Adam Graham. If you have a comment, go ahead and send it to me, box13@greatdetectives.net. Follow us over on Twitter at Radio Detectives, and become one of our friends on Facebook, facebook.com/Radio Detectives. And remember to cast your vote for the show once a month on Podcast Alley, podcastalley.greatdetectives.net. Well, before we get started with today's show, I do want to remind you, if you haven't already, to please check out our book, Tales of the Dim Night. It's a fantastic superhero story with a strong family storyline also going with it. We've got some reviews posted, as well as interviews, excerpts, and much more at dimnight.com. That's dimnight.com. Well, let's get into today's episode of the Abbotts. This one is called The Blood Red Diamond.
After all, suppose you were a detective's wife working on a case involving a baseball team, and one of the star players tried to get to first base.
The National Broadcasting Company presents The Adventures of the Abbotts, starring Claudia Morgan and Les Damon as Pat and Jean Abbott. Tonight we are fortunate to have with us, making his dramatic debut, the man America knows and loves as number 42 at Abbotts Field in Brooklyn. One of America's great athletes and a great guy, Jackie Robinson. Our story is a tale of homicide in the ballpark. And here is Jean Abbott to set the stage for this puzzle in murder.
Pat and I had gone for a spin in our convertible. Meantime, in a hotel room in San Francisco, Monty Phillips, the best catcher the Yellow Sox ever had, was entertaining a visitor.
I told you to stay away from me, Louie.
And I told you I'd be back, Monty. It's funny, you're a very smart apple on a ball field, but you ain't using your head now.
Get out of here. I ain't gonna ask you again.
You're a sap, Monty. Look. The boss says his syndicate's got $400,000 tied up in Tuesday's game. The boss says you can make yourself $75,000 just by losing.
I ain't taking a cent of that dirty dough.
$75,000's a lot of lettuce, kid. You'll be washed up someday. You'll wish you'd taken it. It's awful easy to throw the game, Marty. You lose a foul ball in the sun. You make a slow throw to second. Little things like that, nobody'd notice.
Will you scram out of here?
The boss says if you don't want to take his dough, you're not going to play Tuesday. You're not going to play ever, Marty. I'm giving you one last chance. You take the dough and lose on Tuesday?
No. No, I told you I'd break you.
Okay, Marty.
Hey, put down that gun.
I'm awful sorry, kid. The boss just can't afford to lose that 400
Hey,
G's.
Louie, don't!
Yeah. It's like I said. You were a very smart ball player. But really, you were just a jerk, kid. Just a jerk.
Get some morning papers here. Monty Phillips murdered. Find big league catcher's body in hotel room. Killer gets Monty Phillips. Get your morning papers here. Get your morning papers.
When we got home that night, John Stafford, an official of the Baseball Commission, telephoned and asked Pat to go to his apartment immediately. Pat, as usual, tried every trick in the book to keep me off the case. But later on, in John Stafford's apartment, yours truly was in the case right up to her little ears.
I'm not calling off the game next Tuesday, Mr. Abbott.
You're not, Mr. Stafford?
No. I think it would be the worst thing we could possibly do. I want the boys to go ahead and play as though absolutely nothing had happened.
But do you think that'll convince the people that the Yellow Sox are playing an honest ball game?
I do, Mrs. Abbott. If we cancel the game, it'll seem as though something rotten had been going on. Of course, meantime, you've got to find out who killed Marty Phillips. That is your job, Mr. Abbott.
You say whoever shot him didn't leave any clues in that hotel room?
None?
You know Marty well?
Yes, ever since he played high school ball.
You know anything about his private life? Something that might be a lead as to who killed him?
I know nothing of the sort.
Plenty of blind alleys in this case, aren't there?
Does the case faze you, Mr. Abbott? Simply because the killer has been rather ingenious?
No, it doesn't faze me. Who's going to catch for the Yellow Sox on Tuesday?
Ned Tilton. He's a manager player, you know.
Mm-hmm. How does Ned feel about all this?
I don't know. Why don't you ask him?
Thanks, I will. Maybe he'll be more helpful.
Maybe.
Pat and I went to visit Ned Tilton, the manager player. Ned was kind of husky, gruff, but sentimental, and quite broken up about the death of his pal, Marty.
Well, Marty was a great catcher, Mr. Abbott. Baseball won't see the likes of Marty for a long, long time.
As we know, Ned.
I love that kid. Gee, I used to sit in the dugout and get goose pimples just watching him behind the plate. He had that magic, like Willie Mays. I busted out crying when I heard Marty was dead.
Well, Ned, have you any idea at all who might have wanted to get Marty?
I think it was some crooked mob, Mrs. Abbott. Couldn't have been any of his friends. They were all crazy about him.
Anybody ever approach you, Ned? Try to get you to toss a game for dough?
I'd break their necks the minute they opened the trap.
Okay, Ned. We'll be moseying along. Thanks.
Yeah. Give a year's salary to get my hands on the guy who plugged Marty.
Maybe we can dig him up for you. Bye.
Yeah, so long. Sorry I couldn't serve you folks anything. I don't drink myself. I never touch it.
Bye, Ned. We'll do everything we can to even up the score for you.
Yeah, well, thanks. I'll be praying that you do.
Pat and I went home, and he sprawled out in his favorite chair. He began toying with his chin thoughtfully.
You know, dear, there's one thing that might open up this can of peas.
What is it, dear?
The Yellow Sox pitcher.
Freddie Manning?
Mm-hmm. Suppose a mob did get to Phillips. He and Freddie Manning are the whole team anyway. Now, Phillips is out of the way, so their only hope
would be to reach the pitcher, Freddie.
Mm-hmm.
I've an absolutely sensational idea.
Well, naturally.
Well, now, if you go to talk to Freddie Manning, it'll be no dice. But if I...
Stop. Right there.
Well, Pat, you know how a man will talk to a woman. They're putty in our hands.
Yes, well, I don't relish the idea of you alone somewhere with Freddie Manning, twisting him into a piece of putty.
Well, suppose I meet him. They say he's a wolf. Now, suppose he doesn't know that I'm Mrs. Abbott. Suppose he doesn't even know I'm Mrs.
The answer is still no. I won't allow you to do it.
But if it'll solve the case...
I am not going to risk some gangs using you for target practice.
But I just want to find out if anyone's tried to bribe him. I just want their name. I just want him to get palsy-walsy.
Yes, I know. Well, there are degrees of palsy-walsy.
It just means taking off my wedding ring for a few hours.
Means what?
Well, so that Freddie doesn't know I'm married. So that he'll get friendly. All right, Pat?
No.
Oh, okay, Warden. I won't try to make a break for it now, but someday I will. I'll get out a stir. Wait and see. The possibility of my solving the case entirely on my own was too tempting to resist. One afternoon, while Pat was at the office, I met a sports writer who was a longtime friend. He introduced me to Freddie Manning. Then, with a double-talk story about my old maid aunt being sick, I gave Pat the slip for a night and went out on a date with Freddie. He was young, dark, terribly handsome. A dreamboat. We went to a nightclub together. I was launching my dreamboat with champagne.
Jeannie, baby, you have just connected with a guy who's going places. You know that?
Sure, Freddie, I know.
Matheson, Johnson, Carl Hubble. Those guys had nothing compared to your little Freddie. And you're in line to be my ever-loving baby, huh, Jeannie?
You bet. You're going to be wonderful out there on the mound this Tuesday, aren't you?
I can't miss. I'm in perfect shape. You know the doc says there isn't a huskier guy in the league?
Tell me a secret.
Anything my honey wants to know.
Did anybody offer you money to throw the game Tuesday?
What do you want to talk about that for? Come here, baby.
Oh, Freddie, people are watching.
All right, then let's go to my apartment. I got a gorgeous terrace. We make some drinks at my bar. You know, if you stand on tiptoe on my terrace, you can reach right up and grab a chunk of the moon.
Well, it's awfully late.
And I got some music you like, too. Moody, low-down stuff. Shearing, Art Tatum, Ellington. What do you say?
Well, I
I'll show you my scrapbook. Time I was in Hollywood. And all the movie stars gave me a big party. I got autographed pictures from all of them. To the best pitcher in baseball. That's me, honey.
Okay, Freddie. Let's go.
Good. Now, you'll like it on the terrace. Nobody will be watching us but the man in the moon. And he don't care.
Freddie took me to an exquisite, ultra-modern penthouse overlooking the bay. He kept the place dimly lit. He played a few records. And then the ball players started to pitch.
Come here, Jeannie, honey. Give me a kiss, hmm?
No, wait.
What? What's the matter?
Well, I thought you were going to show me your scrapbook.
Oh, that can wait.
But I want to see where it says, to the best pitcher.
Okay. Scrapbook's here, right under this table.
Must have cost a lot of money to fix up this place, didn't it?
Yeah, why?
Oh, I was just wondering. I know the Yellow Sox pay you plenty,
But maybe I could be picking up some extra dough on the side for throwing a few games, hmm?
I wouldn't blame you for it. You ever do that, Freddie? Do you think that's why Marty Phillips was killed?
Get this. The cops went through that whole routine with me. I don't know anything about it, so forget
Freddie,
it.
You're hurting my arm.
Unless you like to get slapped around, forget it.
All right. Don't get so excited. Now, let's see the scrapbook. That's better. Say, who's she?
Oh, give me that picture. That doesn't belong in there.
To my darling, my own adorable sweetheart. Should I be jealous?
No, she's an old flame. Gone and forgotten. Go on, look at the rest of the book. Look at the big shots I'm with.
Oh, that's Commissioner Stafford, isn't it?
Swell guy.
He asked you much about Marty?
What the devil do you keep harping on that for? What are you up to?
Nothing. Oh, come on. Play another record for me. Then we'll go out on the terrace and see if we can really touch that moon.
Good evening, Jean.
Hello, Pat.
Or should I say good morning?
Oh, it is late, isn't it?
How's your aunt?
Much better, thank you.
Amazing old girl, isn't she?
Yes, amazing.
Especially the way she has people sit up with her when she's sick.
What's wrong with sitting up with a sick old aunt?
In a strapless evening gown?
Oh, that. Well, you see, my other dress... Well, I mean, this dress...
What'd you find out from Freddie Manning?
Freddie Manning?
You're not wearing your wedding ring, dear. And you've been dancing with somebody who's clumsy on his feet. Your slippers wouldn't look like that after a taxi ride to your aunt's house. Not much fun being married to a detective, huh?
Pat, I went to my aunt.
I said, what did you find out from Freddie Manning?
He wouldn't talk.
You were with him all evening and you didn't get a lead?
No, I tried very hard, Pat. He was kind of touchy when I spoke about Marty. That's all.
Now, I ought to get the hairbrush and spank the daylights out of
I
you.
was only trying to help, dear. Pat Abbott, I have half a mind to...
You have a half a mind, period. After I told you not to fool around in this case, after I told you to stay away from Freddie, after I...
Jealous, Pat?
No, I certainly am not.
Worry about me tonight?
I never gave it a thought.
You're as amazing as my aunt.
Why do you say that?
You don't get jealous.
Mm-mm.
You don't worry.
Nope.
But you smoke 2 whole packs of cigarettes.
Oh, that.
Not much fun being married to an observant wife. Hmm?
In just a moment, Act Two of tonight's adventure of the Abbotts.
What do you know about your government? Do you know, for example, who is responsible for your personal security? The security which comes from being healthy, having a good education, and being well taken care of when we are unable to care for ourselves. A new secretary has been added to the President's cabinet as head of the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare. Actually, the department handles the work of several governmental agencies. The United States Public Health Service, which safeguards the general health of the American people. The Food and Drug Administration, which makes certain that our food is pure and safe. The Social Security Board, which takes care of older people, children, and the blind who may need help. And the United States Office of Education, which through research acts in an advisory capacity for the various state boards of education. All these agencies, through the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, are ever watchful of our personal security. That's how your government works.
And now for Act Two of The Blood Red Diamond.
Tuesday afternoon, Pat and I went to the final game in the Yellow Sox series. The stands were packed. There had been no break in the case. Freddie Manning, my boyfriend, was pitching as sweet a ball game as you've ever seen. Ned Tilton, the manager-player, was giving him wonderful support at the plate. Pat and I knew Tom Whitley, the sportscaster. Tom was the sportscaster who sounded strangely like Jackie Robinson, and we sat right beside the mic as he broadcast the game. Pat's eyes kept searching the stands, the dugout, and the field, watching for a tip-off if there was to be any dirty work.
This is Tom Whitley, fans. The game's tied at 1-1. It's the last of the sixth, at the bottom of the batting order coming up. It'll be Freddie Manning, the pitcher, who's doing a great job out there today. The game has been a rough and tumble affair, not as dignified as the games we have at Ebbets Field, where we never try to influence the umpires. It just happens that the field over there in Brooklyn is the only one in the world where they serve right and left-handed pop bottles. Yes, this has been a wild game, and the only thing that's missing at a brawl like this is Leo the Roaster. I know a great new gag about Leo, but he's on top of the world now, and we'll just let him have his day. Well, here's Manning getting ready to step in. He gets a great big hand. There are 2 down, nobody on. There's the wind-up, the pitch. It's a hard grounder wide of third. Taylor's over, comes up with the ball. This will be close. But Manning falls down, and the throw is there for the 3rd out. Freddie seems to have tripped as he headed for a first, but he's not getting up. The lad must have twisted an ankle or something. Everyone running towards Freddie, and he isn't moving. He's got his face right down in the dirt. The crowd's tense. This may mean he's out of the ball game. Ned Tilton, his catcher, is going over to him now. He's waving for the doctor. There goes Commissioner Stafford, leaving his box, heading for Freddie. Stands are quiet now, very quiet. One woman seems to have broken past the field police. Oh, yes, a good friend of the team's, Mrs. Tilton, Ned Tilton's wife. Now, there goes my man on the field, and he's going to signal me as soon as the doctor finds out what's wrong. He's waving at me now. He's saying, Freddie, why, that's impossible. That's... Ladies and gentlemen, Freddie Manning is dead.
Pat and I raced to the Yellow Sox locker room, fighting our way through the shocked, milling crowd. Commissioner Stafford was there, and Ned Tilton. A policeman stood guard over the dead body. Stafford was very pale.
Well, Mr. Abbott, I really don't know what to say. The usual words don't mean anything.
What is the doctor's opinion, Mr. Stafford?
Looks like a heart attack. No signs of violence. Nothing at all. It was a hurried diagnosis, but from the blood that gushed from Freddie's mouth and nostrils, and from what he could see in just a quick glance, the doctor says Freddie's heart just popped and the boy died.
You the regular team, Doctor? Ever examined Freddie before?
Yes, that's what's so puzzling. He examined Freddie last week for an insurance policy. His heart was perfect.
But that doesn't make sense. He could...
First it was Marty. Now it's Fred. Are we cursed or something?
Try not to take it so badly, Ned.
I'll find my wife. I gotta go home. I don't feel right. I can't stand this.
But I'll find her, Ned. Ned, did I ever meet her?
I don't know. I don't think so. I've got to find her.
I could swear I'd seen her before today. Ned, sit down.
Oh.
That's it.
How could it happen? How could this happen?
Can you answer that, Mr. Abbott?
I think so.
Exactly what do you mean?
Freddie was probably murdered.
What?
A boy in his condition doesn't have a heart attack out of a clear blue sky. It's very unlikely. The attack was probably induced by poison.
Poison? Well, he played 6 innings.
Slow poison, Ned. Poison from his glove or from the ball or the bat.
But how would he have swallowed the poison?
I'm not sure yet, dear. It was a violent heart attack. Might have been caused by nitroglycerin. That works very slowly till the system has a lethal dose. Shows no immediate signs. Then suddenly it explodes the heart. Doctors use it for its expansive effect in small doses for arterial tension.
Oh, sounds fantastic. Now all you have to do is to find out which person out of the 25,000 people here engineered that. Rather difficult odds, Mr. Abbott?
And I'll use your favorite word, Mr. Stafford. Maybe.
Pat and I finally left the stadium and went home, with Pat frowning, mulling the problem over and over. Late that night at home. What's bothering you, Jean? You look troubled. Well, I've a feeling it'd help if I knew...
If you knew what?
Mrs. Tilton, Ned's wife. The woman who ran out on the field when Freddie fell. I could have sworn I'd seen her before. But where?
She's with the team very often. What difference does it make?
No, it's something peculiar. Where did I see her? It wasn't at the ballpark. Pat, I've got it. Her picture was in the scrapbook.
Freddie's? The one he showed you that night?
That's right.
Well, why wouldn't her picture be in the scrapbook? She's been with the team ever since Tilton joined them.
But the inscription, dear.
What inscription?
On her picture. She wrote, "To my darling Freddie, my own adorable sweetheart."
Are you sure about that?
Positive. I didn't know who she was when I saw it, so I just passed it by, but isn't that kind
I'll
of...
be back.
Well, where are you going?
To the stadium. Now, you wait here. This will be too dangerous.
I certainly will not. Why will it be so dangerous to go to the stadium?
Because the killer may be there alone, and very much in the mood for a few more bloody murders.
Naturally, Pat couldn't shake me off. We bribed the night watchman to let us into the stadium. It was deserted, but there was a light shining through the door of the Yellow Sox locker room. Pat opened the door. Ned Tilton was there, emptying his locker.
Mr. Abbott, what are you doing here so late?
We've just had an idea, Ned.
About Marty and Freddie? Well, come on, tell me about it.
You told us when we visited your place that you never drink, Ned.
Huh? No, I don't.
There's a scotch bottle in your locker.
Oh, that.
There isn't any scotch in it. Is there? Got the nitroglycerin in the bottle, Ned?
Yeah. And if you or that wife of yours makes a move, I'll throw it on the floor. There's plenty left in the bottle. It'll blow us all to bits.
You put the liquid nitro on your catcher's mitt, didn't you, Ned? Just enough to wet the ball. You kept throwing to Freddie. Freddie was tossing spitballs. It's against the rules, I know, but Freddie knew a way around the rules. He was sneaking a few across the plate that way. It's happened before. You were the only person who knew he threw spitballs. You knew he'd keep licking his fingers to wet the ball. You knew he'd swallow little bits of the poison that way. That right, Ned?
Shut up, Abbott, and move out of the way.
You got a very attractive wife, Ned. And Freddie was quite a wolf. He and your wife were more than just two people interested in the team, weren't they?
Aye.
There are pictures in Freddie's scrapbook with a greeting that's a little too affectionate. Burned you up, didn't it?
I said get out of my way.
You started out to make a fortune, Ned. You placed heavy bets against your own team. Hired a guy to threaten Marty. The guy had to kill him. Then you went after Freddie. But not because you wanted him to throw the game. No, things were too hot to rig it that way. No, you wanted to kill him yourself for a personal reason.
I've got nothing to lose if I drop this bottle of nitro.
Now, look, Ned.
Keep away from me, Abbott.
Be careful, Pat.
I'll be getting out of here now, if you don't mind. Don't follow me. All I have to do is toss this juice in front of you and the missus. Stay right where you are. I'm watching you. I can still see you. Don't move.
There he goes, Pat. See him? He's running into the grandstand.
Stay here, Gene. I'll get him.
Come back, Pat. You'll be killed.
Lost him. He must have ducked behind the benches.
Come back, Pat.
I told you not to follow me, Abbott.
Get down, Pat. He's going to throw the nitro. Pat, are you all right? I can't see out there. Pat!
I'm all right. Stay where you are. Now, Ned, you and I are going to play a little tag.
You come for me and I'll break your neck.
You picked a bad spot, Ned. That exit is closed. Where'll you run to now?
Keep your hands off, Abbott. I'll kill you. So help me, I'll kill you. Get out. Now I'm going to choke the life out of you.
That does it. You had enough, Ned? Oh, you had enough? You had enough?
As I came running up the ramp, Ned was out cold. Pat still had strength to haul Ned's body to the locker room where we waited for the police. When Ned was revived, he identified the gunman who'd killed Marty Phillips. I guess someone should have told Ned that Pat Abbott was a Marine veteran who'd been on the receiving end of the dirtiest fighting the Japs could ever think of. Very late that night, it was almost sunrise. Pat? Isn't it about time for me to put my wedding ring back on?
I suppose so.
Go ahead, you put it back on my finger.
How do you know I want to marry you again?
Well, don't you?
No.
Oh, come on, marry me again.
I said I don't want to.
Well, would you marry me again for all the rice in China?
No.
For all the smorgasbord in Sweden?
No.
For all the moolah in Fort Knox?
No.
For a kiss?
You talked me into it.
Moral of the story. Husbands who wonder if their wives still love them should let their wives spend an evening dancing with a handsome stranger. I know a perfect nightclub they can go to. And the management is not responsible for hats, coats, or stolen hearts.
The National Broadcasting Company has presented The Adventures of the Abbotts, starring Claudia Morgan and Les Damon as those popular personalities of detective fiction, Pat and Jean Abbott, created by Francis Crane. Also heard tonight were Everett Sloan, Mandel Kramer, and Kenny Delmar. The Adventures of the Abbotts was written by Howard Merrill. Original music composed and conducted by Dewey Bergman. Produced by Ted Lloyd and Bernard L. Schubert. Directed and recorded by Harry Frazee. Next week, same time, same station. Another exciting adventure in crime with Pat and Jean in The Adventures of the Abbotts.
Welcome back. Well, this is definitely a notable episode for the appearance of Jackie Robinson. As they said, this was his dramatic radio debut, and probably the only time he had played a character who was not himself. And even then, it's somewhat close on that matter, because the way that Jackie Robinson talked with the Ebbotts Field references, he certainly sounded quite a bit like himself. Of course, this wasn't his dramatic debut per se, because he had, of course, made the movie The Jackie Robinson Story, which was something that he shared with Babe Ruth in starring in a film about yourself. That's not been done in quite a while. Of course, from a dramatic standpoint, it's easy to see why his interest never became much more than just an occasional distraction. By the way, the reference to Leo Durocher was the manager of the Giants, the Dodgers' crosstown rivals, and Jackie Robinson played for the Dodgers. And Durocher had won his first World Series as a manager just the previous season when the Giants swept the Cleveland Indians in 4 straight. Which makes this show kind of an interesting one to listen to at this time. This episode originally aired in the spring of 1955, right after a Giants World Series win, and here we are playing it in late winter after the Giants' next World Series win after 1955, or 1954. Of course, Jackie Robinson would get his own World Series win later on that year when the Brooklyn Dodgers at last won a world title with him on the team. But on to the mystery. Yeah, there was a mystery here. This one was kind of clever because it mixed, it had 2 different motives kind of mixed together. You had the throwing the game motive for financial reasons, and then the jealousy motive. So that, I think, kind of made it a difficult one to crack. And I did detect a wee bit of hypocrisy in the attitude of Pat Abbott, thinking back just a couple weeks ago to the episode The Yellow Chip, where he went undercover and hid the fact that he was married. But I guess we can say the Abbotts' relationship is definitely a complex one. This past week, I got an email from Elizabeth who says, "Hi, Adam, I'm usually a day behind on hearing the podcast as I listen at work, but your mention of Sir Rubinstein piqued my interest. I'm sending you a few news articles about Mr. Rubinstein. They make for interesting reading." Indeed, they do. It's I'd mentioned that they had preempted an episode of The Adventures of the Abbotts to talk about the death of Serge Rubinstein. And I guess the best way to briefly explain him is that he was the Bernie Madoff of his day, and was alleged to have basically committed huge financial scams on 4 different continents. In addition to this, he was also a draft dodger, and he was found strangled to death in what is still an unsolved murder. New York seems to have quite a few of those very famous unsolved murders. And if you want a connection to one of our other detective shows, a year after Rubinstein's death, there was actually a movie made about a fictionalized version of Rubinstein murder called Death of a Scoundrel. That film starred George Sanders, who was the brother of Tom Conway, who plays Sherlock Holmes on our Thursday edition. So there, the connections are all made clear now. Well, that'll do it for now. We'll be back tomorrow with Nero Wolfe. Well, right now on my iPod, I'm listening to and enjoying the Nero Wolfe novel, And Be a Villain. This one is particularly fascinating because it deals with a murder on the set of a radio show during radio's golden age. The novel was released in 1948. And Be a Villain is just one of many Nero Wolfe short stories, collections, or novels that are available with Audible. Audible, of course, has got a lot of other titles in all sorts of categories and genres. You can try Audible out free for 2 weeks and get a free audiobook. You can even download And Be a Villain as your free audiobook. go to audiblepodcast.com/oldtimeradio for your free trial. But let's go ahead and we will take a listen to today's Nero Wolfe adventure, The Deadly Sellout.
Ladies and gentlemen, the ringing of that phone bell means mystery, adventure.
Nero Wolfe's office, Archie Goodwin speaking. You're up. And you've lost your... Oh.
Archie, the answer is no.
Hold on a second. The answer to what is no, Mr. Wolfe?
I shall not attempt to find a blonde for anyone.
You've got the man on the phone a little wrong, Mr. Wolfe. He's not looking for a blonde. He's looking for a prize fighter.
Indeed. Have him come here.
Okay. Mr. Wolfe will see you at 8. So long. I was all set to argue with you about taking the case. You gave in too fast.
Nonsense. I'm fascinated by the thought of anyone misplacing a prize fighter. They're usually quite large, aren't they?
They are. But what this guy is worried about is not only finding his boy, but finding him alive.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's the bulkiest, balkiest, smartest, and most unpredictable detective in the world. That chair-born genius, Nero Wolfe. Created by Rex Stout and brought to you in a new series of adventures over this NBC network in the person of Mr. Sidney Greenstreet.
The case of the deadly sellout. That's what my boss, Nero Wolfe, called it. And it almost meant curtains for the firm of Wolfe and Goodwin. But let me give it to you straight right from the beginning. Although you ought to know that it wasn't until it was all over that I knew the very beginning of it myself. It all started in the New York flat of one Brock Rainey.
Yes?
The name is Jerry Fay.
I'm supposed to know you?
Being a very good friend of Pepe Gatto's, it's time you got to know me. May I come in?
Oh, sure. You've got a problem, Miss Fay?
Pepe took a fall at the garden last night against a coffee and bum named Eubanks. Right?
As far as I know, Sister Gatto met his match.
Please, Mr. Rainey, do me a favor. Skip the sausage meat. It happens I saw the $1,200 you counted out to him to take a quick dive in the first.
You did?
How else would I know?
Okay, then here's my wrist. Slap it, Miss Fay. I'm a bad bull.
Now, look, who's kidding who? I don't care if Pepe makes himself a few deals on the side. I should worry whether he gives those meat eaters on the benches a run for the ducats. What's it to me?
If you're not worried, Sugar Plum, then neither am I. Also, I'm a very busy man.
Not too busy to pay off, I hope.
Pay off? To who?
To me.
For what?
For keeping it to myself that you collected $5,000 from the Eubanks crowd for getting Pepe to take that dive. Certain people might not like to hear it.
Miss Fay.
Yeah?
Drop dead.
I don't think we understand each other.
Which is just as well. Now get out of here.
There's something
Blow,
else.
bimbo.
Okay, Mr. Rainey. Have it your way. I'll go find someone with a more sympathetic ear. Someone like Lawson. Arnold F. Lawson. So long.
Wait. Where does Lawson come into this?
You asking is stalling. Lawson dropped a sizable piece of change on last night's two-step.
No. Close the door, Jerry.
Oh, yeah. $25,000 to be exact. That's a lot of corn to lose because a cheap fight manager arranges a frame. At least Arnold Lawson might think so.
Sit down.
Who's tired? Look, Mr. Rainey, it goes very simply in only one way. Lawson at yet knows from nothing except that your boy Gatto lost the fight. He may suspect, but he don't know. And he really don't have to know.
Glad to hear you say that.
And I'll be glad to see the shade of 3,000 long green banknotes.
How much?
You heard me, $3,000.
Get out.
Okay, I'm going. To the next phone and call Lawson.
Look, Jerry, give me time, huh? I haven't got that kind of dough right now.
Tell it to Lawson. When he gets through with you, you won't need any kind of dough.
You know, I've got Gatto set for a go with Mellish, the title contender. Gatto can take him. Please believe me, he's going to take him.
So?
So after what happened in the Eubanks fight, the odds on Gatto will be like a war debt. We can clean up.
Listen,
we can make
Heel, I wouldn't trust you from 11:59 to midnight. Get it up. Now. I'll give you 6 hours. After that, Lawson. So long.
Come on.
Hello?
Hello, Rainey, this is Gatto.
Hiya, Pepe.
Look, the boys dropped in on me at the office at Mindy's. Lawson wants to see me.
What? Lost?
Look, Bum, I'm the one with the cauliflower ears. You heard me. What do I do?
Nothing.
But...
Don't go near him. Stay home. Let me take care of it.
How? What'll you do?
I don't know yet, Pepe, but I'll find a way.
How did he find out?
Your girlfriend.
What? She wouldn't do that. She hates the guy.
Hate him or love him, she told him.
I can't believe it.
I suggest you call our little doll Jerry and give her your regards for the double cross. Meanwhile, stay put in your apartment. Don't move.
But, Rainey... Hello.
75, 3. 319, 3...
Archie. What on earth are you mumbling about?
The high cost of blonde.
Indeed.
Oh, you can say that again.
I have no intention of doing so.
Okay, be smug. But there must have been a time even in your life when knickknacks from Tiffany figured on the budget.
Phooey.
Not to mention steak dinners and champagne. Or what did you feed your girls? Peppermint lozenges?
Nonsense.
Nonsense?
They preferred lime.
Oh, I'm dying, and he laughs. Mr. Wolfe?
Yes?
I have decided that you are giving me a raise.
Archie, this is not a period in which unilateral decisions are wise.
So I'll be a dope and get a raise, huh?
As for your future mental attainments, you may be right. As for a raise...
You want to drive me to gambling? Like betting on fights or going... Okay, it's the doorbell, and I'm answering it.
The name's Rainey. You're Goodwin?
I'm Goodwin. Come in.
Is Wolfe in?
Mr. Wolfe is always in. Unlike prize fighters, I guess. Come on.
Thank you.
Mr. Wolfe, this is Mr. Rainey, the man who lost his prize fighter.
How do you do, sir?
I'm not doing so good. Mr. Wolfe, you got to help me.
That will depend.
On what?
The fee? I digress. Your problem is what, Mr. Rainey?
Mr. Wolfe, I manage a fighter named Gatto. Maybe you've heard of him.
I have not. However, that is of little significance. You are having difficulty with this Mr. Gatto?
I'm not having difficulty with him. I can't find him. Maybe you better let me give you the whole picture, huh?
Very well.
Well, Gatto is an up-and-coming boy, Mr. Wolfe. He had a little upset last week with a guy named Eubanks. But everybody knows in spite of that, Gatto's heading for the big time. I think he'll prove that when he goes against Mellish.
Mr. Mellish being another pugilist, huh?
That's right, Mr. Wolfe. Now, Pepe, that's Gatto. Pepe was due at the Turf Club this afternoon to meet the opposition management and go over the setup. He was due, but he didn't show. I waited all afternoon, and then I started the phone calls and taxis.
The results?
No results. I combed every joint I ever knew him to buy a beer in, and the score was 0. Matter of fact, nobody's even seen him for 4 days.
You would have tried the gymnasiums, naturally?
I did.
Does this pugilist have a home?
Yeah, 206A Rathburn Street. A penthouse on the roof.
He was not at home during all this time?
It's where I tried first. It was empty as a bank on Saturday afternoon.
I see. And you want me to find him for you?
If Pepe blows this fight, Mr. Wolfe, it'll ruin his career.
And the preservation of his career is worth a good deal to you?
I got a check for $2,000 right here.
Archie?
I'll get it. $2,000.
Very well, Mr. Rainey. I shall take immediate steps.
I got a cab waiting outside. We can get started right away.
We? Phew. I shall remain here.
But how do you expect to...
Archie.
Yes, Mr. Wolfe?
You will leave with Mr. Rainey. I need information. You might try the Rathburn Street penthouse to start with.
But I've already been there.
With all due apologies, Mr. Rainey, suppose you restrict your activities to pugilists. Archie is a trained observer. You are not. Archie, you will pick up whatever you can at Gatto's apartment. I especially suggest a careful check on his wardrobe.
Wardrobe?
If his clothes are missing, Mr. Rainey, it would indicate that he left voluntarily and deliberately, for whatever reasons he may have had. If they are not, Archie, you will phone me from the apartment after your investigation is over.
Okay.
I shall, in the meantime, devote some thought to the subject.
Huh? For $2,000, all you're going to do is devote some thought?
Mr. Rainey, if I were not a modest man, I would point out to you that you're getting quite a a bargain.
Gatto? Gatto? He's not here, I told you that. I was up here before.
He left the door unlocked?
I had a key. Guess I forgot to lock up after I left.
Now, let's look around. Bathroom?
Yeah.
Empty. Nice penthouse. That a closet?
Yeah. What do you think? He's playing hide and seek?
Try it.
Okay.
Anything in there?
Nothing I'm looking for.
What's that you found?
A hat.
Well, let's see.
Lady's hat.
Yeah, smart and expensive. Label reads a Madame Yetta original. That bunch of lace and feathers cost somebody a fast $50.
Yeah, probably one of his girls left it behind.
And maybe she'll call for it. Come on, we'll take a gander out on the roof.
I took a gander out there. It's bare as a bone.
What have we got over there with the chimney?
Where?
Over there.
Just an old awning. Got blown down in the storm last month.
Be right with you.
What are you doing?
Looking under it. Oh, brother.
You found him?
Yeah, we found him, chum. A little late. 2 holes in his dorsal development and dead as a clay pigeon.
Yeah.
Well, what have you got to say?
Now at least the bookies will cancel all bets. We both save our dough.
Yeah. I got to phone Mr. Wolfe. And there he was, Mr. Wolfe, under the old canvas awning.
Where's the hat? Oh, this is it.
That's it, boss. Snazzy number, no?
Where'd you find it?
On the floor of the closet.
You're right, Archie. Frothy little bit of millinery caprice. Have you any idea whose it may be, Mr. Rainey?
I wish I did.
You'll have to find out.
Well, how, boss?
The hat is an original. See, the label under the band reads a Madame Yetta original. Tomorrow morning, Archie, you will interview Madame Yetta.
Yes, boss.
And discover in your inimitable fashion for whom she made this chapeau. Hello?
Archie again, Mr. Wolfe. Per your instructions, I have just talked to Madame Yetta.
What did you learn?
Madame Yetta tells me she made that hat for a Mrs. Lawson.
Who is Mrs. Lawson?
Wife of an ex-beer hustler who's in the chips and puts on airs. Lives in the penthouse of the Bradford Arms. I was just about to hop a cab and go up there, boss.
Good. Keep this up, Archie. And through sheer practice, you may yet develop a full-blown intelligence.
Well, I'm trying, Mr. Wolfe. And after the Lawsons, I do what?
Return here immediately and hurry.
How do you do, Mr. Lawson?
Oh, Mr. Goodwin. My secretary tells me you're a detective.
My boss might argue with you on that, Mr. Lawson.
Your boss?
It happens I work for Nero Wolfe.
I see. And you wish to see me about...
About this hat.
Hat? Oh, I see, yeah. Well, Mr. Goodwin, please believe me, I never wear hats like that.
Would your wife be likely to say the same?
My wife? Just what are you getting at?
Would I seem too nosy if I asked how well you and your wife know Pepe Gatto?
How well do we know who?
Pepe Gatto.
The pug?
No, not such a pug.
No, huh? I lost $25,000 on him in the Eubanks fight. If you ask me, he laid down like a dog.
And did you talk it over with him?
Talk it over with him. Never seen the man in my life.
Not even at the fight?
No, I placed the bet over the telephone. I'd scarcely have anything to do with a character like Gatto, Mr. Goodwin.
You surely won't from here on out, Mr. Lawson.
What do you mean?
Gatto is dead.
You don't say.
He was murdered last night.
Murdered?
And what would you say, Mr. Lawson, if I told you that this hat is your wife's and that it was found in a closet in Gatto's apartment?
Now, wait a minute. Let me get this straight. Are you implying...
Not implying. Facts are sticking out.
What time was this dumb brute done away with?
Oh, I'd set it at somewhere between 5 and 7 p.m. last night.
Well, you said it very conveniently. Thanks.
Why?
My wife and I drove out of the city at 4:30 yesterday afternoon. Didn't get back until 2 this morning.
And this hat? It took wings and flew into Gatto's closet? Is that the answer?
No, that's not the answer.
Then what is?
This is. A month and a half ago, I was with Celia on a bus top. She was wearing that hat, and the wind blew it off her head.
I see. And from there, we figured that somebody picked it up, and it finally wound up at Gatto.
You can figure anything you please. Personally, I don't feel in any way obligated to figure anything.
Darling, I was just on my way out and... Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you were busy.
Yes, I am busy, Celia.
Wait a minute. He's not all that
Run along
busy.
now, dear. You'll be late.
But I want to talk to
Run
you.
along, Celia.
Yes, darling. Sorry. I'll see you later.
Beautiful. Really beautiful.
I've always thought so, Goodwin.
You, didn't give me much of a chance to talk to her, did you, Lawson?
If I didn't, it's for your own good.
My good? I don't get it.
Celia's a sensitive person, and I won't have her bothered.
And do you mean to tell me you let him scare you?
Let him scare me? Say, will you stop being so fearless with my life? The guy said don't bother my wife, so I didn't bother his wife. It was that simple.
Apparently his wife is not blonde. Answer the phone, Archie.
No, you answer it. Now you've hurt my feelings.
Oh, well. Hello?
I want to speak to Mr. Nero Wolfe.
Mr. Wolfe speaking.
Oh? Is it true that you're interested in the Gatto murder?
Who are you, and how do you know he's been murdered?
The second question is none of your business. And as for the first, call me Jerry. Jerry.
How do you do, Jerry? Jerry. Where do you call?
Would you like to come to an auction?
An auction?
You know, going, gone, to the highest bidder.
And what are you placing on the auction block, Miss Jerry?
A few facts. All in good condition and guaranteed to make it a cinch to snag the Gatto killer.
Sounds promising.
Only you'll have to bid against real money.
May I have the address of the auction room?
You'll have no trouble finding it. Your assistant was there last night.
Where?
The penthouse on top of 206A Rathburn Street. The big item goes on at 4 bells. Yeah? Who is it?
Man named Wolfe sent me.
Just a sec.
You're Jerry, huh?
I was expecting the man named Wolfe.
Unfortunately for me, honey, when he's expected, I usually show up.
Come on in.
You? See, I'm the legs of the combination. He's the brains. It makes a nice division of labor.
I see. You came in plenty of time.
On the nose is our custom. Where are the rest of the bidders?
Any second now.
Mm-hmm. How many besides me are coming?
One.
Small auction.
But big action.
How'd you happen to decide on this?
I knew Gatto pretty good.
And you were fond of him pretty good, huh?
How did you guess?
Well, you've got a key to this place of his, or you couldn't let yourself in. It adds, no?
Gee, you should have been a detective.
Just what I keep telling Mr. Wolfe. Look, tell me, Jerry, darling, this other person who's coming to the auction, who?
The killer?
You don't say. You sure the killer isn't here already?
Look, I didn't kill him.
The story you would like me to believe is that you witnessed the killing, huh? Called the killer and Mr. Wolfe and said, come on, kids, you can get me either to talk or shut up, depending on who pays the most. That it?
Something like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, prove you know what you're talking about. Who is the killer? Is it Block Rainey?
Should also have your head examined, pretty boy. I talk for dough and only for dough. Not that I'm mercenary or anything, but...
Okay, tell me this. How come you saw the killer in the act?
Simple. I was here with Gatto. Called me to come see him. While I was here, the shot came through the window there from the roof.
You know something, sweetheart?
What?
I can't understand how a girl like you, a pretty nice girl under all that paint and powder and Broadway shellac, how you could do a thing like this. You were in love with Gatto, I know that. Everybody does. And still you're willing to keep your mouth shut if the killer pays enough. How come? What's the matter, honey? Did I hit a tender spot?
I don't think you understand. Sure, I was in love with the goof. Then along comes this other dame. She's rich and beautiful, and she has everything to give him.
Ooh, do I know her?
Of course you do. She...
Jerry.
Oh.
Jerry.
She was just about to tell me, and then the shot came through the window from the roof, boss. It's a flat roof outside.
You didn't, I suppose, see the murderer?
No. I caught Jerry in my arms. By the time I laid her down on the couch and got out on the roof, the killer was gone.
Get right over here and bring our client with you, if you can find him.
Rainey?
That's right. He has a right to be in on the kill.
Okay, boss. But keep away from that beer till I get there.
Don't be impertinent. I shall be busy phoning Mr. and Mrs. Lawson. Meanwhile, I want them here, too. Besides, one bottle won't do any harm. There they are. Let them in, Archie. You remain seated, Mr. Rainey.
Okay, Mr. Wolfe.
Well, come in, Mr. Lawson. Come in.
Mr. Wolfe here?
He's here. Nice of you to come.
Anything to help the law.
Ah, Mr. Lawson. Your wife didn't come.
No, Mr. Wolfe. She was out when you called. Sorry, I forgot to tell you. I left word with the butler, however.
Mr. Lawson, about 20 minutes ago, a girl named Jerry Fay was killed.
So?
She was killed in your neighborhood, in a flat formerly occupied by one Pepe Gato.
Well, where would that be?
Maybe your wife knows where the flat would be.
How dare you, sir?
No histrionics, please. Where was your wife when the girl was killed? I'm advising you that if there is an alibi, now's the time to state it.
I wouldn't humiliate Celia by alibying for her.
Then the police will pick her up.
But she didn't kill this girl, Mr. Wolfe.
You have reasons for that opinion?
The best of reasons.
I'd be grateful if you'd state them and let me be the judge of their excellence.
One should do. This one. Celia's out in the country visiting her mother.
Oh?
Does that settle it?
Possibly. What's her mother's telephone number?
Why,
Merely a routine check.
Well, can't you take my word?
I'll take her mother's number. Well, Mr. Lawson?
I'm sorry. I hoped you'd buy this story.
What do you mean?
Mother's been dead for 10 years.
I see.
Well, I don't. What's the idea?
It's known as marital devotion, Archie. I suppose you realize, Mr. Lawson, that in shielding your wife, you're aiding and abetting a murderess?
I haven't stopped to realize anything. When Goodwin brought me that hat, I didn't know what to say.
Oh, you pitched me a curve then, too.
Well, I suppose you might call it that, but...
And she didn't lose the chapeau off a bus top.
No, but you've got to understand. Celia's the dearest thing in life to me.
Yeah, so's a lady rattlesnake to its husband.
I suggest it is time for you to be objective in this matter, Mr. Lawson.
What do you want to know?
Tell us where she can be found.
I have no idea.
When is she expected to return home?
Never.
Oh?
You see, we had an argument. I doubt that I'll ever see her again.
Then we're quite on our own, Archie.
To do what?
To make a journey to Gatto's apartment.
Gatto's apartment?
She probably has a key to that popular abode.
But she wouldn't go there, boss.
On the contrary, I am of the opinion that that's just where she would go. Give me my hat.
Don't tell me you're going to stir yourself.
It's a most unpleasant necessity, Archie. But the lady in question is dangerous and not at all hesitant about indiscriminate gunplay. Get out the car, Archie. We'll make the journey to Rathbun Street penthouse with the hope that Celia Lawson will show up in time to mourn her lost love.
You want me to go along with you, too, Mr. Wolfe?
Yes, indeed, Mr. Rainey, I do. I trust this chair will hold me.
Should. Biggest chair in the house.
Mr. Wolfe.
Yes, Mr. Rainey?
Mr. Wolfe, am I to understand that the way you have it figured is that Mrs. Lawson killed Gatto, and then to keep the girl from pinning the crime on her, she killed her, too?
What's the matter, Mr. Rainey? Don't you think the theory holds water?
Well, yes. I mean, of course it does.
Thank you. On the other hand, there is room for doubt.
I'm glad to hear you say that, Mr. Wolfe. Would you mind explaining?
I'll explain, Mr. Lawson. Mr. Goodwin was in this room when Jerry Fay was killed. Right, Archie?
Right, boss.
He ran as quickly as he could out onto the roof, but your wife was nowhere in evidence.
What difference does that make?
A good deal, I'd say. Wouldn't you, Archie?
Yes, a detail like that would give a jury room for doubt.
Oh, don't be a fool.
How so, Rainey?
Well, I was about to agree with Rainey. I mean on sheer logic.
I'm afraid I miss your point, Mr. Lawson.
Well, what if Goodwin didn't see her? That proves nothing. She fired the shots, and then she ran down the fire escape.
What fire escape?
The one a few feet beyond the chimney.
Mr. Lawson.
Yes?
Who told you there was a fire escape there?
Why,
Yeah, who did? You can't see it from here, Lawson.
Well, I just imagined there might be.
Sensationally accurate imagination, Mr. Lawson. Allow me to congratulate you.
I don't know what you have in mind.
You have in mind to see your wife convicted of the murder of Pepe Gatto, and so punish them both for having dared to fall in love.
I love Celia. I worship her.
Yes, that's what you expected me to believe, hoping, meanwhile, that a hat would convict her. You worshipped her until she became fascinated by a young savage animal known as Pepe Gatto.
No.
At that point, the worship shifted into reverse, and you went green with hate. Hate that drove you to climb that fire escape that you know so much about and shoot him in the back.
You're dreaming.
Jerry Fay saw you in the act, and when she was about to divulge your identity to Archie, you killed her too, meaning to hang her murder on your wife along with the other killing.
That's a lie.
Mr. Lawson, I didn't bring you here to apprehend your wife. There's really no reason why she should come here. I suggested this visit in the belief that you'd betray some guilty knowledge of the place and circumstances, as you have so obligingly just done.
You're clever, aren't you?
Monumentally.
But a little hasty.
So, why?
This gun in my hand, haven't you noticed?
Of course, sir, but yours is not the only gun in the world.
What?
Sit still, Arnold, and don't turn around.
Your wife, Mr. Lawson. Come in, my dear.
Celia, what are you doing here?
I came to get a hat that I'd left in Pepe's closet. It suddenly was clear to me what was in the wind, and I thought I'd better remove all evidence that you could possibly use against me.
Celia, listen, you must understand
I
it's for you.
understand one thing only. Pepe's gone, and you took him away.
Listen, please, if you let me explain, you'll understand.
Yeah?
Please, honey, help me.
Sure, I'll help you.
Celia!
Well, that's all, Mr. Wolfe. What now?
Archie, why is it when you drive it always gets so crowded outside?
Will it go tough on her, boss?
Why not? She killed a man in cold blood. Though she actually saved our lives while doing so.
I hope that helps her at the trial.
I hope so, Archie. After all, if she hadn't done what she did, what would have happened to the lobster bisque?
What lobster bisque?
The lobster bisque that Fritz is making for dinner. Hurry, Archie. It really can't be appreciated unless it's eaten hot.
You have been listening to The New Adventures of Nero Wolfe, starring Sidney Greenstreet. Tonight's transcribed story was based on the characters created by Rex Stout. This is an Edwin Fadiman program, produced and directed by J. Donald Wilson. In the cast were Larry Dobkin as Archie Goodwin, and Ann Diamond, Charlotte Lawrence, Gerald Moore, Don Diamond, and Eddie Fields. Next week at this same time, Nero Wolfe and Archie will bring you The Case of the Killer Card. Don Stanley speaking. 3 chimes mean good times on NBC. Saturday night is date night, and NBC has a lively lineup of music and fun to help your courting along. Tomorrow, Dennis Day brings you a melodic and mirthful 30 minutes, and then Judy Canova gets together with her gang for a sparkling session of mountain-style song and laughter, followed by singing MC Red Foley and his friends on that exciting parcel of Western tunes and mayhem Grand Ole Opry. Here's Sam Spade. 3 chimes mean good times on NBC.
Welcome back. Well, I was a bit premature when I said that this was going to be our last episode last week with Larry Dobkin in the role of Archie Goodwin. I was reading off the usually reliable digital deli log, and as I had not yet heard the episode. So this was the last Larry Dobkin episode, and next week we'll have another Nero Wolfe, another Archie Goodwin, who was actually among this week's guest stars. One thing I will say is that I do think the writers probably taking Wolfe out of the brownstone too much. And this one probably had the least plausible explanation for him leaving. He was heading out, from what I could understand, because he thought there might be danger. It was kind of a moment for me. I guess one reason why they might be having him leave so often is it does show how the Nero Wolfe novels are different from other detective stories. You almost, in one way, have a divided detective. The body and the brain going separate ways, and the body reporting back to the brain. So it's quite different from other detective shows that they've had on the air. So there may just have been I don't know, maybe there's some discomfort about having every episode end with a denouement in the office. But other than that, this was a good episode. We got some comments here. This one comes from Wade from the app. I love your podcast. How about more Scarlet Queen and Adventures by Morse? They are a favorite of mine. Well, thanks so much, Wade. To be honest, I have seriously considered and wanted to do, as a bonus for the app and those who have the premium site, do the entire Adventures of the Scarlet, Voyages of the Scarlet Queen, series. I continue to think about it. My only question, I think, is time and also listener interest in that. Usually when I played another episode of something else, it kind of ties in to our main show. The reason, of course, Voyage of the Scarlet Queen was played was that particular episode was the basis for the Johnny Dollar episode. Adventures by Morse would be difficult just because you can't really play one episode of Adventures by Morse, because they're actually 8 serialized adventures. But I will keep that in mind if the time and opportunity arises. Got a comment for Jesse who said, who writes, first of all, Dear Adam, I just wanted to suggest an app for any of your listeners who have an iPod or iPhone. It's called OTR Streamer, and you can listen to pretty much any old show on it, including comedy, westerns, drama, mystery, and more, Dragnet included. That is a pretty good app. I will say it doesn't have some of the rarer shows, and it doesn't have all the episodes of the show, but I've got it on there. And it's nice if you just want to download a quick episode and you don't want to get on the computer to mess with it. She goes on to say, also, I just want to tell you how much I enjoy both Dragnet and Great Detectives. I think they would make a perfect trio if you added a podcast for more spy shows, like I Was a Communist for the FBI. You know, that is actually a great thought, because there are a number of shows that you could do kind of on a spy-ish espionage level. I've already mentioned in recent weeks listening to and approving of Dangerous Assignment and A Man Called X. You take that with I Was a Communist for the FBI, and you've already got close to 300 episodes if you were doing kind of a weekly show. Gotten a lot of suggestions for listeners for our next podcast, and I'll have to admit that is one of the more appealing ones. So once again, great suggestion, and I will keep that, take that under advisement and think about that. All right, well, that'll do it for today. This past week, I got actually a pretty helpful email from Brian in Boulder. And he made a lot of helpful suggestions. I won't go into all of them now, but one thing he pointed out is that I don't mention rating the show on iTunes, and that's a good point. If you go into the iTunes store and you're enjoying the show, you just go to the Great Detectives of Old Time Radio page, and you can rate it even without writing a review. The same thing goes for the app. So I do encourage folks to do that, and that's a good suggestion. I'll mention it from time to time. Well, before we get into today's episode, I do want to remind you that my wife and I's book, Tales of the Dim Night, is available in both an ebook and paperback form. Go to dimnight.com, and you can read excerpts or order it online. It's really a great story with a lot of comedy and some moments of paying homage to some fantastic superhero series, and we even worked in a little bit of a detective parody in there. So check it out at dimnight.com. We're going to get into today's episode now of Let George Do It, the end of summer.
District of California, on behalf of independent Chevron gas stations and standard stations throughout the West, invites you to Let George Do It. End of summer. Another adventure of George Valentine.
Personal notice, danger's my stock and trade. If you're all at sea and someone keeps rocking your boat, you got a job for me, George Valentine. Write full details.
Dear Mr. Valentine, I hope that you won't think I have any ulterior motives in writing to you. May I just say that what I'm asking you to do is very important to me, more important than I can tell. And the most important thing of all is speed. You see, Mr. Valentine, I am alone, and it is difficult for me to find out certain things by myself.
Who is Rosaire writing to? George Valentine. Who is George Valentine? Who is she? She would only move her shoulders so I could see the words. Could she possibly suspect? Oh, no, of course not. Only she'd move so I could see. Oh, I must go easy. I must... Oh, what lovely shoulders in the morning light. Round, sloping, and warm. Warm as the end of summer. Now I'll be able to see what she's writing to Mr. Valentine.
Oh, I didn't see you. I didn't know you were in the room.
Oh? Didn't you? On my way outside for a cigarette and a breath of air, that's all. Will you join me?
Were you looking over my shoulder?
Mm-hmm. That's quite a bill you have on your charge account, isn't it?
You were looking.
I'll tell you a secret. Of course I was. But all I could see was you, Rosaire.
I don't think I care for a smoke just now. I'll finish sending my bills and things. You go ahead.
Oh, it's all right, Rosaire. I'll see you later on.
Miss Burlick, this is a permanent house, isn't it? I mean, well, most of the places up here seem to be cabins.
Oh, yes, but I'm not. Not permanent, that is. It's my sister's and her husband's house.
Uh-huh.
They live here the year round. I've just been here a short time, my first visit.
I see.
I haven't seen my sister, Marcia, this morning, but perhaps you'd like to meet her husband. He's Frederick Jindal, the artist.
Oh, yes, I think I've heard his name.
He specializes in murals, you know. Busy right now with some panels for a new library. Has to meet a deadline. Oh, Frederick. Frederick, would you... Well, I guess it doesn't make any difference. He didn't hear me, I guess.
Oh, we're not insulted. What good's an artist without a temperament?
Well, he's not like that. But he's working awfully hard, terribly hard. I've been modeling for one of the panels. Well, I don't understand him very well. My shoulders...
You and your sister seem to go for different types.
What? Yes. Yes, Marcia's much smarter than I am. More positive, more beautiful, more everything.
I think what Miss Brooks meant was the man you asked us to check into is a little easier to understand, that's all.
Oh, no, I'm not a very complex person.
You know, Miss Burlick, I don't normally like to investigate someone without knowing why. But I think in your case it stood out all over your letter. And now it's written all over your face.
Oh, really?
So here goes. Dr. Nicholas Wills, age 37, single, residence 347 Maple Drive, City. Graduate Stanford Medical School and Children's Hospital and private practice in pediatrics. Belongs to a lot of clubs, got a list here. Plays good golf, and as for his financial standing...
Please, I don't care about that.
I didn't think you did. Dr. Wills is now vacationing in a cabin about a half a mile from here, as I'm sure you already know. And, as for the women in his life, there seemed to be none. At least until he came up here.
That was what you really wanted to know, wasn't it?
Well, I've only met him a few times. Marcia introduced me one day when we were swimming. Mr. Valentine, I've had my fingers burned in the past, that's all. You learn to be cautious when you're not as young as you should be.
You? Miss Burlick, you underestimate yourself. From the minute I walked into this room, all I've been able to see is you.
I know you'll have a little lunch before you go back. Perhaps you'd like to take a walk while I see if I can find Marcia.
Just a second. What else is bothering you, Miss Burlick?
What?
Well, you're thinking about two things at once. And you haven't sounded as eager and as urgent as you did in the letter. Has something happened since then? About Dr. Wills?
No. No, of course not. It's just that I'm embarrassed, I guess. I told you that I wasn't a very complex person.
So, that's all it was. Hiring a man to find out things that aren't worth knowing anyway. Oh, you're a fool, Rosaire. Dear warm-blooded fool. That's what's so nice about you. But I can relax now, can't I? I should relax. Because now your Mr. Valentine will never guess what I did, will he? No one will ever guess.
But, George, what are you going to say to the doctor?
Oh, I don't know, Brooksy. I'll think of something. How do you like the weather, Doc? Something like that there.
George.
Not hard to drop in on people up in a place like this.
Yeah, but...
Dr. Wills. Come on, Brooksy.
But, George, you
don't mind. Everybody leaves their cabins open around here. Besides, we know about him. He's a normal, amiable sort of guy.
Well, he's not out playing golf. There's his clubs.
Uh-huh. Yeah, look through there. You can see out back.
Huh?
Canvas to park a car under, only no car.
Oh, yeah.
You know something else? I don't see any medical instruments either.
But, George, he's on a vacation.
What difference does that make? Doctors and instruments are like St. Bernards and brandy.
Well, not exactly.
Okay, but take a look. Dresser drawer, still open. No razor any place around. No toothbrush, no suitcase.
I'd say we're not going to be able to ask any questions of the good doctor.
Check. Whatever it is that's in the air, we'll just have to fly through along.
May.
Huh?
Wonder who she is.
What are you talking about?
Well, the name May doodled here by the telephone. And on the pad there's a number.
Yeah. 673R3. Well, Brooksy, we're not here to snoop.
Oh, no.
So let's go back to lunch and do just a little prying.
How does one entertain one's guests? Would you like some more iced tea, Miss Brooks? Marcia always did that for me. Such a stream of conversation you can hardly hear yourself think. No, it's better this way. There's no voice to interrupt your work. And there'll be no more torment in my mind like there was last night. I need to redo the gray in the face of famine. It's my best panel. Yes, I must do it before.
Did you look out in the gardens by the orchard? I said, Frederick, did you look for Marcia out in the...
Yes. She's probably just dropped by the club for lunch, Rosaire. It's better this way.
What's that, Mr. General?
Would you like some more iced tea, Miss Brooks?
Oh, no, thanks.
I just happened to think of something. What does R mean in a telephone number?
Why, it means ring, Mr. Valentine. You live in the country and people listen in.
Oh, I get it. Like 673R3 means ring 3, huh?
That's our telephone number. How did you happen to know?
Oh, well, I just noticed it, that's all. Miss Burlick, do you happen to know anyone by the name of May?
May. In May, things come pushing out of the ground, waving their colors at you, shouting at you, telling you where to look.
What are you talking?
It's my wife's name, Mr. Valentine.
Marcia?
But she calls herself May sometimes.
Where did you see that name, Mr. Valentine? Where did you see the telephone number?
Well, I just happened to notice.
Where did you go on your walk before lunch? No, never mind. I know where you went. I followed you a little way. I knew you'd be suspicious. That's why you came up instead of writing. You went to Dr. Wills.
Please, Rosaire. Can't we just finish our meal?
Frederick, you haven't looked for her. You've been thinking of your work. You didn't look in her room. You haven't seen her all morning, since last night. I heard you quarreling, but you haven't seen her since then. I didn't look in her room. Excuse me.
Rosaire!
There. You see? Her bed hasn't even been slept in.
Oh, Miss Burlick, please. We knew you were upset about something.
He's gone too, isn't he? I walked by Dr. Wills this morning and I saw his car was gone.
But you don't have to add 2 and 2 quite so fast, do you?
Ever since we were children, she's always been more attractive than I.
He and Frederick haven't been getting along lately. I don't know what it's all about, but I guess when I saw the way she looked at Dr. Wells yesterday...
Well, isn't there anyone we can call to at least find out where the doctor went?
I could tell the way she looked at him. There was something between them. They're together somewhere. I know they are.
Do be quiet, Rosaire. Good heavens, there's no point in advertising that my wife's run away from me. Oh, yes, that's what happened. We fought last night about it. Oh, I guess I'm supposed to be outraged. You would be, Mr. Valentine, but then you're younger than I am. There comes a time when you can't endure the spring anymore, when it's almost a relief to look forward to the quiet end of summer.
George, I don't believe it. I don't believe any of it.
Yeah, I know, Brooksy, you're right.
Well, did you get a chance to use the telephone?
I called the doctor's office in the city. He's down there, all right. But I couldn't talk to him because he's making his regular Monday visit to hospital patients.
Oh.
He goes down every week of his vacation. There's nothing unusual about it.
And so, of course, he took his things. But, George, there's nothing missing from Marcia's room. And a woman who's running away from her husband would at least take the jacket of her suit.
Brooksy, it's all in the air. I don't know what it is, but I'd bet my bottom dollar they didn't run away together.
Why did I say that? But I had to say something. Marcia isn't here. I had to explain somehow. They must believe. Rosaire will help them believe with her silly feminine suspicions. Oh, yes, it'll be a day or so before that doctor comes back and people will realize he's been alone. I'll think of something by then. Mr. Valentine won't be here to realize Marcia was never with the doctor. And I can always take care of Rosaire all right.
Oh, excuse me, Mr. General.
Oh, yes, quite all right. You're leaving?
No, not exactly. In fact, I just wanted to tell you we're sticking around for a while.
You're what? You're what?
You are Mr. Valentine?
Yes, if you don't mind. If it's all right with you.
He's staying. What can I say?
Well,
I shouldn't have told the story, but I can't tell the truth.
It's likely to be a bore for you. I'm under tremendous pressure, you know. Some work to be done.
Down, I mustn't lose control like I did last night.
My wife thinks I'm headed for a nervous breakdown.
Of course, Mr. General. Miss Brooks and I understand.
He's guessed.
We understand perfectly.
I should have taken precautions. A murderer takes precautions.
Yes. You understand, I'm sure.
A murderer. They know.
Yes, Mr. Valentine, of course.
That I killed my wife. That I killed her.
Yes.
I killed her.
Whatever you say.
I killed her.
What was it you said, Mr. Valentine?
Nothing. Just that I'm sure we won't be here long. But I'll have to get help from a garage. You see, my car has a flat tire, that's all.
Oh, that's all. But that's a good deal, isn't it? Well, what a shame.
Yes, Mr. General, it is. Isn't it?
We'll return to tonight's adventure of George Valentine in just a moment. If your car's engine knocks, take a tip. Just try ping-free Chevron Supreme gasoline. It's scientifically blended to burn evenly to assure smooth power under every driving condition. And that's important when you realize a knocking engine is a strained and laboring engine, wasting both power and fuel. With premium quality Chevron Supreme, you'll find your car delivers smoother cruising on the straightaway, faster pickup in heavy city traffic, and extra power on hills. Chevron Supreme is climate-tailored, too. That means ping-free power no matter which temperature or altitude zone of the West you drive in. In fact, for today's high-compression engines, you can't buy a better gasoline. Get it at independent Chevron gas stations and at standard stations, where they say and mean, we take better care of your car. There is a time of year when the warmth of the sun lies quietly on the land. When the clamor and confusion of growth and early blossom is past, when ahead is the peace and retirement of autumn. Well, if your name is George Valentine, you can only wonder what it is that's in the air. But if your name is Frederick Gentle, and you're an artist, and you know what it is you want, the end of summer.
Ah, there, that's it. Yes, I have the line of your shoulder much better now, Rosaire. No, don't move.
I'm sorry, Frederick.
You don't mind if I watch, do you? Your painting?
Why? No, naturally not.
Thank you. It's very interesting. I confess I'm a little confused by it. There's so much intensity.
Yes, but that's the point, don't you see? Over here, it resolves itself into the emotional, the unthinking.
You mean the figure of the woman?
Yes.
I wish I could see it. He won't let me see what he's done with me.
It looks to me, Miss Burlick, like he's sort of idealized you as an escape from problems or something.
Mr. Valentine, there's no reason for you...
No, forgive me. I don't mean anything. I'm just talking, that's all. Your wife must have been an intense sort of person.
My wife? She seemed to go out of her way to misunderstand me. She could never realize that a man has his work to do. Work that must be done. You must give yourself to your work, but she kept interfering. She tried to make me slow down.
Frederick, she only wanted to help.
Sit still, Rosaire. Interfering and advising, and I cannot stand interference.
She only seemed worried about you.
Sit still, Rosaire.
I'm sorry. Am I still all right?
Now, there is a woman, Mr. Valentine. All woman, and that's all.
Oh, Frederick, I wish I knew what you meant sometimes. It's stupid not to be intelligent, isn't it, Mr. Valentine? He says things like that, and he says other things. And I think sometimes what he means is he loves me.
Now, Rosaire, you're tired and upset. You shouldn't...
No. Let her talk, Mr. Gentle.
I thought it was so wrong. I'd hated to think of it. My own sister's husband. But maybe it's different now. Maybe I shouldn't be so old-fashioned. Yes, she's got the man I wanted. Maybe I should take hers. Turnabout's fair play, isn't it? Maybe I could get so I would understand you, Frederick. I don't know. What do people want out of each other anyway, except to be with each other?
Rosaire, my dear, you don't need to talk now. I've kept you posing too long.
Perhaps I'm attracted to you too, Frederick. Perhaps all I want is to love and to be loved.
Rosaire.
Don't touch me.
Huh?
No. No, I can't stand you. What made me say those things?
But, Rosaire, I did it just for you.
Oh, I'm a fool. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Frederick. I can't stand you.
What did you mean?
What?
You said you did it for her. Did what? What did you mean?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Where is your wife, Mr. Gentle?
I don't know what you're talking about. Flat tire. Weren't you going to get your car fixed or something, Mr. Valentine? So you could leave?
Brooksy, so what'd you find out?
Well, I looked all over, like you say. I didn't find anything. Nothing that would indicate... Well, of course, I don't know exactly what I expected.
Oh, yes, you do, Brooksy.
Well, yes, I know. George, what do you suppose he did with her?
Oh, I don't know. He looks like the trunk or hatbox type.
What? But I looked at him.
I know. Oh, I'm just sore because there's nothing you can grab onto. It's a powder keg without any fuses.
Well, George, when I was outside, I talked to one of the neighbors for a minute. And I mentioned Dr. Wills.
Yeah?
And the man said Dr. Wills kept asking about one of the women over here.
What?
Yeah. The man thought it was amusing because the doctor seemed so smitten with Rosaire.
Well, now that knocks the last leg out from under that elopement gag.
Well, we knew that anyway.
Oh, Brooksy, the trouble is our gags are wearing thin. That flat tire we cooked up is about worn down to the rim. We're going to have to get out of here, and what are we going to take with us? What are we going to tell anybody? What do we actually know?
George.
Come on. Miss Burlick, where... Oh. What's the matter?
Nothing.
Come on. What is it?
Well, dusting in the upstairs sitting room.
Dusting?
When you're upset, you're supposed to do something homely. Something you're used to. But I remember. There used to be a revolver there on the sideboard.
A revolver, huh? Miss Burley, you can stop being upset about losing a boyfriend.
What?
You haven't lost him. Now listen, we need your help. You said earlier you heard your sister and her husband last night quarreling.
Well, yes, but...
Where did you hear them? When did you hear them?
Well, I don't know. Sometime after I went to bed, around midnight, I guess.
What did they say?
I don't know. I tried to listen, naturally. She seemed to be pleading. He was shouting. But I couldn't tell. It was so far away.
Weren't they in the house?
No, outside.
Okay, then where's your room?
The center one there in back. The voices came from in back.
Huh?
Mr. Valentine, what did you mean when you said about the doctor?
Miss Brooks will tell you. Right now I've got a date.
George?
Yeah. I'm going to stop dripping water on the Rock Angel. I'm going to try a sledgehammer on it instead.
Marcia, is it true you only wanted to help? Is it true you were only thinking about me? You're out there, but you can't hear me, can you, Marcia? Or was I the one who could never hear you? It's too late to listen, isn't it? Interfering, advising, suggesting. Or were you just begging me to think of something besides my work, warning me not to work so hard, warning me about it?
Oh, hello there, Mr. Jendal.
Oh, Mr. Valentine. Mr. Valentine.
All right, Mr. Jendal. I'm just looking for something, that's all.
Oh? Well, what did you lose?
Oh, it's around here someplace. I'll find it all right. If I have to comb every inch of the place.
But I...
All right. You don't need to help me.
You weren't out here in back, were you?
Someplace within a radius of that window up there. Rosaires' window.
What?
Yeah. Because you could hear voices from one to the other, or vice versa, I don't know. Anyway, big voices, excited, fighting voices. Yeah, I'll find something within that radius.
What do you mean?
I told you, you know what I mean, better than I do. What's that over there, a greenhouse? I said, what's that over there?
Yes. Yes, it is.
Yeah? Well, I'll try the hedge, maybe. I'll find something sooner or later.
Oh, Marcia, why didn't I listen to you? You said I should rest. Instead, look what I've started.
No, nothing by the hedge. Greenhouse, huh?
There's a line. A line from the end of the hedge to the beech tree. An imaginary line, but has to stop somewhere. He can't go farther than that.
Wait a minute. How about the tool shed back there? No, I guess not. The peach tree. Guess I might as well circle around and take a look at it.
He's going to cross it. He's going to cross the line. Now I have to stop him. I have to, Marcia. I have to stop him.
Hey.
Huh?
Hey, what's the matter with you, Mr. Jendal?
I have heard that guilty creatures sitting at a play have by the very cunning of the scene been struck so to the soul that presently they have proclaimed their malefactions. For murder, though it have no tongue, will speak with most miraculous organ.
Yeah, I know, Shakespeare.
Yes, it's what you're trying to do, isn't it? Trying to make me confess.
Thanks for being so obliging.
Make me confess that I shot her out here last night.
You what?
Of course I did it, of course. You guessed the minute you saw me. How can man hide the guilt of his mind? But I still have the gun that I used last night. Oh, God forgive me. Well, she warned me that I'd have a breakdown, Mr. Valentine.
Yes, you've got to kill him.
What else?
You've got to kill him.
Murder is not a matter of
Kill
choice.
him. Kill him.
Oh, George.
It's all right now, Angel.
Oh, golly. I called you before, and I saw... Didn't you hear the car come up the drive?
The car?
Yes. The car with Mrs. Jendal. Marcia. Your wife.
Marcia.
No, Brooksy. You'll be okay.
Oh, but George, I thought she was dead, too.
I know. So did I, Brooksy. Until I began to realize he told me he'd killed her out here last night with a gun.
Huh?
Well, if Rosaire could hear voices, Rosaire could certainly hear a gun.
Oh, yeah. But Marcia is with Dr. Will.
What?
But another doctor came back with them.
Oh, yeah, I see. I guess there was something secret between Marcia and Wills. She must have run to him after the big fight last night. She knew she was right and her husband was wrong. He did need help. But what she didn't know was that the thing she was so worried about had already begun.
What thing?
She didn't know about his breakdown, Brooksy, that started last night. She didn't know that he'd commit murder in his mind.
George? What you thinking about?
Oh, I was just thinking. Brooksy, did I count too much on something? I mean, you did tell me that you looked all over the place and hadn't found anything. But still.
George, didn't you look in the greenhouse before we left?
Well, no, as a matter of fact, of course not. Marcia was back, and I knew
Well,
that...
I looked there, darling. It didn't have room for a pin, let alone a body. The greenhouse was crammed to the door with dry grass seed, bulbs for next year, flats of flowers.
Well, then I figured right, Angel. It's the end of summer.
Your car engine may have a long, serviceable life. Others wear out fast. And what makes the difference? 9 chances out of 10, the engine that wears out too soon is a victim of internal rust, the cause of 80% of engine wear. This high-cost, corrosive rust starts the moment your engine stops, the result of acid-laden moisture. But RPM motor oil is specially compounded to prevent this internal engine wear. It contains an adhering agent that coats the inside of your engine with a moisture-proof film. Even though your car stands idle for days or weeks, RPM stays on the job, prevents rust. No wonder RPM motor oil is first choice in the West. It's the oil that stops 80% of engine wear. Ask for RPM at independent Chevron gas stations and at standard stations where they say and mean, we take better care of your car. Next week, with George Valentine involved in a new riddle, we'll hear him saying...
Yeah, sure, Brooksy. Riley's boys will catch somebody all right. But I was the one who let McGee know so he could get to the poor guy first.
Oh, George, it isn't your fault.
No, I'm a great guy. First, I chase a girl upstairs so she can get shot. Then her old man is killed.
But I said you couldn't.
And if the Englishman turns up a corpse, I'll have a pretty good score today, won't I? Yeah, join Valentine and see the morgue.
Tonight's adventure of George Valentine has been brought to you by Standard of California on behalf of independent Chevron gas stations and Standard stations throughout the West. Robert Bailey is starred as George with Francis Robinson as Brooksy. Let George Do It is written by David Victor and Jackson Gillis and directed by Don Clark. Also featured in tonight's cast were Virginia Gregg as Rosaire and Joseph Kearns as Gentle. The music is composed and presented by Eddie Dunstetter. Your announcer, John Heaston. Listen again next week, same time, same station, to Let George Do It. This is the Mutual Don Lee Broadcasting System.
Well, this is an episode where I have to just tip my hat to Mr. Gillis and to Mr. Victor, the writers, because they totally had me buffaloed. The end here really surprised me, in that it turned out that there weren't any murders that occurred. What kind of made Joseph Kearns' performance, I think, so convincing and interesting for me is I've actually heard him when he was on The Whistler, and he used kind of that same voice here for the character he played in this week's episode. This type of story actually could have been right out of The Whistler, except for the way that it ended. Getting back to Brian's email, which I mentioned at the start of the program, probably one of his most interesting suggestion was to consolidate things more, make things more centralized. And I'm thinking of how we might do that yet. He also wrote this: I know nothing of how you're monetizing, but seems that some of this, that you could have ratings being generated from the same treasures you have already created. Maybe survey us too. I delete my tech podcast after I listen to them. I save yours. Oh, and I definitely appreciate the comment. The big challenge with monetizing past podcasts would be you'd have to have some sort of ad that you could insert. And we don't actually have a system for that. There are some for video podcasts, not so much for audio. I'd say probably more than half of our downloads come from the past, but those are basically just for posterity. Probably our greatest successes in terms of monetization has come when we've had sponsors at the beginning of the program. This is kind of a tough time for internet advertising. So I haven't figured it out, and I think about it a little, but I enjoy doing the show enough that it's really kind of a secondary concern. By the way, I just thought I'd offer a little bit of an update. January, this is the first podcast we've recorded since January has been done. January was our first month where we had 200,000 unique downloads. We're actually heading for 2 million since we started the show. Probably going to hit that this month. We're getting around 3,000 to 4,000 people from all around the world listening to every episode. And so you have an idea of who's listening. 82% of our audience is in the U.S., 10% is in Canada, 3% is in the UK, 1.4% is in Singapore, and a little less than 1% are in Australia and China. So glad to have you listening as part of our global audience here. We'll be back tomorrow with Sherlock Holmes. Well, before we get started with this week's episode of Sherlock Holmes, I do want to remind you about Netflix. This past month, Piper Jaffray came out with a report saying that one reason Netflix is growing so fast is that there is such a wide number of Netflix-enabled devices out there. You may already own one. There's 170 million of them. With the Instant Watch, you can watch classic detective movies such as Laura and the great mystery film The Third Man, as well as enjoying episodes of Monk, Columbo, and several great BBC dramas. You can try Netflix out by going to netflix.greatdetectives.net. We're going to get into today's episode now, The Strange Death of Mrs. Abernathy.
Kreml Hair Tonic and Kreml Shampoo present the new adventures of Sherlock Holmes, starring Nigel Bruce as Dr. Watson and Tom Conway as Sherlock Holmes. Well, once again, it's time to join our good friend and host, Dr. Watson, as he waits for us in his familiar study. Good evening, Dr. Watson.
Good evening, Mr. Bell.
Well, are you all set for tonight's new Sherlock Holmes adventure?
Yes, my boy, I'm all set, as you put it. I was looking over my notes on the case before you arrived, and I came across this. It played an extremely prominent part in tonight's story.
Well, what is it, Dr. Watson? It looks like a dried leaf of some kind.
In its younger days, Mr. Bell, it was a sprightly sprig of parsley.
Dr. Watson, I know you have the habit of collecting odd mementos from your cases, but a sprig of parsley.
And yet, my boy, this withered piece of greenery enabled Sherlock Holmes to solve one of the most diabolical murders that we ever encountered. The strange death of Mrs. Abernathy.
Well, this I've got to hear, but first of all...
Oh, I know, Mr. Bell, I know. You have a message for our listeners.
Every man who wants to get to the top should realize how much neatly groomed hair adds to a man's appearance. And I'm sure you'll be interested in hearing how so many of America's most prosperous and successful men keep their hair looking so attractive. They use Kreml hair tonic. And it's easy to see why. Because Kreml contains precious hair grooming ingredients found in no other hair tonic. This is why Kreml gives a man's hair such a natural, well-groomed look. It keeps it in place longer, too. Yet Kreml never leaves hair looking or feeling greasy or sticky. Never leaves it feeling stiff as a board. Just make this test, men. After you apply Kreml, run your hand back over your hair. Notice how delightfully clean your hair feels. Notice how no grease comes off on your hand. Your hair always looks like a million and feels like a million when you use Kreml. Kreml. Kreml hair tonic. Now, Dr. Watson, how about the mystery of the withered parsley and the strange death of Mrs. Abernathy?
Well, Mr. Bell, at the time I'm talking about, this parsley, just like myself, was a great deal younger.
Oh.
But to get on with my story, Holmes had just concluded his amazing investigation in the affair of the Reading bicycle pump murder, and we decided to stay for a few days in the nearby beautiful village of Pangbourne. The weather was surprisingly generous for an English summer, and on our second day, Holmes and I had gone for a stroll along the towpath of the River Thames. Holmes was in an extremely morose mood that day, I remember, as we walked back towards our hotel. The country's beautiful here, Holmes.
Yes, I suppose it is.
Oh, come. Look at the red and grey roofs of the cottages, and the farms peeping out through the trees over there. So peaceful and soothing.
I'm afraid it has the reverse effect on me, Watson. That's the curse of having a mind like mine.
Oh, how do you mean, Holmes?
I observe everything with reference to my own special subject. You look at those scattered houses, and I'm impressed by their peace and beauty. I look at them and think how easily crime may be committed there.
Good Lord, who'd associate crime with a spot like that?
It's my opinion, Watson, based on experience, that the lowest and vilest alleys in London do not present a more dreadful record of sin than does the smiling countryside.
What a morbid thought.
The reason is obvious. The pressure of public opinion can do in the city what the law cannot accomplish. There's no lane so dark that the scream of a tortured child or the thud of a drunkard's blow does not obtain sympathy and help from some neighbor. But look at these lonely houses. Think of the deeds of hellish cruelty, the hidden wickedness, which may go on year in, year out in such places and no one the wiser.
Upon my soul, Holmes, you're in a particularly depressing mood. Hello. Look at this fellow running towards us. Must be crazy. Imagine galloping along a towpath on a hot day like this.
From his expression, I think we may reasonably assume that he's not doing it for the exercise.
Excuse me, but is one of you gentlemen Dr. Watson?
Yes, sir, I am. And this is Mr. Sherlock Holmes.
Oh, how do you do, sir? Mr. Holmes.
How do you do?
My name is Gareth Abernathy. I heard that you were staying in the village. I went to your hotel, and they told me that you'd gone for a walk in this direction.
I presume you need a doctor's help.
Yes, I do. Dr. Watson, I know you're on a holiday, but...
well, naturally, I'm at your service, sir. What is wrong?
No, perhaps we could start walking back to the inn. My horse and trap are there, and I'll tell you about it as we go. My mother's just had a bad heart attack. We live at Holmby Grange, a few miles out of the village. I'd like to drive you out there at once,
but
Doctor.
Surely if you live here, you must have a family doctor.
Well, he's in London for a few days.
I see. Tell me, Mr. Abernathy, what were the symptoms of your mother's heart attack?
Well, she said she was taking her usual nap before lunch. She started to go to sleep and suddenly woke up crying that she was going to die. Said her heart seemed to stop beating entirely for a few moments.
Well, has she had these attacks before?
Well, I can't tell you much about it. The family says that for her age, she's been in very good health. I've been abroad for a few years.
In China, I observe, Mr. Abernathy.
Yes, I went out there as a war correspondent covering the Boxer Rebellion. But how did you know?
The fish that you have tattooed immediately above your right wrist could only have been done in China. That trick of staining the fish's scale a delicate pink is quite peculiar to that country.
That's amazing, Mr. Holmes.
Oh, it's not so amazing as all that. It's just a certain facility for observation, sir. For instance, from what you told me of your mother's symptoms, I should say that her lips are bluish, that she runs out of breath when walking upstairs, and the veins in her cheeks are unusually pronounced.
I begin to think I've met a pair of magicians.
Oh,
but you're right, Doctor.
I see I put you on your mettle, Watson. How did you deduce that?
Elementary, my dear Holmes. The symptoms that Mr. Abernathy described were typical of mitral constriction. I shall be delighted to examine your mother and do whatever I can for her.
I'm very grateful, Doctor.
You're in good hands, Mr. Abernathy. Well, Watson, I shall see you later, no doubt. This is one case in which I'm sure you need no help from me.
Well, Dr. Watson, I'm not much of a one for doctors. Stick out your tongue and give me a guinea. That's what most of them say. Well, what's your verdict?
That there's nothing seriously wrong, Mrs. Abernathy. Just take these drops I'm giving you before each meal and you'll be well in no time.
Lizzie.
Yes, ma'am?
You heard what the doctor said. Now try and stop your wool gathering long enough to see that I get those drops.
Yes, I won't forget.
You'd forget your own name if the butcher's boy was to ring the bell, though, wouldn't you?
Yes, I mean, no.
You can leave the room, Lizzie.
Yes,
I think you should rest for a while, Mrs. Abernathy.
Plenty of time for rest at my age, Doctor. Anyway, I want to talk to you privately. That's why I sent Lizzie out of the room. I want you to bring your friend Sherlock Holmes here to lunch tomorrow.
Sherlock Holmes? But how did you know that...
That he was in the village? There's nothing new in the village or anywhere else going on here that I don't know about, Doctor. Now, will you bring him? I've got something very important to discuss with him.
Really, ma'am, I don't think of the state of your heart that you...
Oh, what was that filthy medicine you gave me?
Oh.
It's made me sleepy.
Well, that was its purpose, madam.
My family think I'm going to die. They're waiting for it. Hoping for it.
Oh, rubbish, rubbish, rubbish. You're not going to die, madam.
We'll fool them, Doctor, won't we? We'll fool them. Oh, who is it?
Now, Mrs. Abernathy. I'll go to the door.
Oh, Doctor, I came to see how Granny was getting along. I'm Rose Abernathy.
I'm Dr. Watson. How do you do, my dear?
Who is it, Doctor?
It's me, Granny. I came to see how you are.
Take the doctor downstairs, Rose. Give him some tea and introduce him to the rest of the family. He's got bad news for them. I'm going to live.
Uncle Gareth, will you introduce Dr. Watson, please?
Of course, my dear Rose. And I appreciate your motive in giving me the privilege. A shy, retiring girl like yourself would hardly dare make such a descriptive introduction as I will.
Uncle Gareth, you've been drinking again.
Well, since I was the only member of this heartless Abernathy clan that had the initiative to go and get a doctor, I think I was entitled to a brandy or two. Come on, Watson. Come and meet my noble brothers. They're here in the library, waiting like hopeful vultures for bad news about our dear mother's health.
Oh, well, sir, I think perhaps some other time.
No. Might as well get it over with.
I'm sorry, Dr. Watson. I didn't know Uncle had been drinking.
Oh, that's quite all right, my dear child.
Dr. Watson, let me introduce my brother, Ernest.
How do you do?
How are you, Dr. Watson? Since the success of Oscar Wilde's recent comedy of manners, Ernest has been unbearable. I think he took its title too literally.
I suppose you're referring to the importance of being earnest.
As you see, Doctor, my brother is a brilliant wit, and brandy sharpens his perceptions even more. He's been known to launch a whole string of leaden epigrams in the course of one evening.
Yes, and he's been known to do an honest day's work in his life, which is more than you can say, my dear Ernest.
Gareth, I'm sure Dr. Watson has no desire to listen to our dreary wranglings. Why not introduce him to John?
I'm going to. Watson, this is my other brother, John Abernathy.
How do you do, sir?
How do you do, Doctor?
John is the respectable member of the family. He manages the estates here, and at least has the unique distinction of having worked for the money he gets from Mother.
Shouldn't talk like this in front of a stranger, Gareth. Bad form, you know.
Yes, Uncle Gareth. Dr. Watson's come here to tell us about Granny.
Oh, and then let's hear the verdict. It means much more to us than you could possibly imagine, I can assure you.
Well, I examined Mrs. Abernathy very thoroughly. Considering her age, I'm glad to say that her condition is quite good. I've prescribed genitalis for her, and she should pull through very nicely. In fact, I see no reason why she shouldn't live to be 100.
Oh, Uncle Ernest, that was one of our nicest wine glasses.
Look at us, Watson. You give us the best possible news, and look at our faces. Don't you realize that this whole family is waiting for one thing? My mother's death?
Holmes, it was perfectly nauseating.
I must say they sound like a peculiarly unattractive family.
Well, except the granddaughter Rose, she's a sweet little thing, but the others are a bunch of good-for-nothings.
Undoubtedly. And yet my reaction to what you've told me is one of intense curiosity. As I remarked earlier today, the quiet countryside, beneath its external beauty, cloaks some of the vilest happenings.
Well, I admit the atmosphere in that household is vile, all right.
And think of the potential tragedy smoldering there. A wealthy matriarch who controls the purse strings. 4 relations living there and praying for one thing, her death. No, Watson, with such a setting, my curiosity is overpowering.
Then you will call on her?
If you think she's in good enough condition to see me. Attempts may have already been made on her life.
Normally I'd suggest postponing it for a day or two, but if you think that she's in danger,
Quite.
I feel...
Watson, tomorrow we shall call upon the lady and see what can be done to help her.
Mr. Holmes.
Yes, Mrs. Abernathy?
Before we go into lunch, I should like to tell you why I asked you to come here today. And I want my family to know, too. Children, I want your attention.
Oh, Mother, not another lecture, surely.
No, Ernest, not a lecture. Merely a statement of fact. I have asked Mr. Sherlock Holmes here today because he is a detective.
A detective? What's the matter, Mother? Has someone pinched the family silver?
Gareth, be quiet.
No, please don't excite yourself, madam. Remember that heart of yours.
Yes, Granny, do be careful.
Oh, stop fussing over me, Rose, and sit down. Gareth, you mentioned the family silver. How did you know that's what I was going to speak about?
Oh, Mother, I was only joking.
Were you? Strange joke. Mr. Holmes, I discovered a few days ago that the Abernathy silver has been stolen piece by piece and replaced by imitations.
How do you know, Mrs. Abernathy?
I recently had occasion to have some of our silver knives repaired. The blades were loose in the handles. The London jeweler to whom I sent them reported that they were not the family silver, but plated imitations. I had him come down here and examine the rest of the set. They're frauds. I want you to find out who's responsible. I know it's one of these 4 children.
That's ridiculous, Mother. Why suggest that one of us is responsible?
Because I know you children too well.
Personally, I think it's what you deserve, Mother.
How dare you?
I'm not dependent on you, Mother, but the others are. You've kept them dangling too long. Look at you, Rose. You're still young. Are you going to stay here another 20 years waiting for your grandmother to die?
Gareth, leave her room.
Now, please, Mrs. Abernathy.
Lunch is served, ma'am.
Oh, go away. I love you.
Quick, Watson. She's having another attack.
Out of the room, everybody, please.
Oh, Dr. Hill.
No. Don't worry, Mrs. Abernathy. You're going to be quite all right.
Are you feeling better, Mrs. Abernathy?
Yes, Mr. Holmes, I am.
That digitalis soon fooled you round, didn't it? You must remember not to take another dose until this evening. In the meanwhile, I think you'd better go and lie down.
No, Doctor. I want to go into lunch. And afterwards, I have something else to tell you, Mr. Holmes. Something I don't intend the family to hear. And it's much more significant than stealing silver.
Mrs. Abernathy, I think if you were to tell me your real problem now, simply and directly, a great deal of time and patience might be saved.
After lunch, Mr. Holmes. Doctor, give me your arm.
Excellent lunch, I must say.
And the conversation has had all the sparkle and gaiety of a funeral oration.
Well, since you've entirely monopolized the conversation, Gareth, that's not very surprising.
Stop wrangling, you two. Got guests. Bad form, you know.
Mr. Holmes, did you care for some more coffee?
Thank you, Mrs. Abernathy. I'd like another cup.
Granny, what's wrong? Your hand's shaking so.
Doctor! Granny!
Quick, Dr. Watson.
Mrs. Abernathy.
Don't be with Mother.
Holmes.
Be good care.
She's dead.
Then I must assume a different mission than the one I came here to perform. I suggest that you all leave this room, and that one of you sends a servant for the police. Murder has just been committed before our eyes.
Murder? But Holmes, she died of a heart attack.
When death is so intensely desired by 4 persons present? No, Watson. I'm afraid I can't assume a verdict of natural death. In proof, I suggest you notice the depth to which that parsley has sunk in the butter. I repeat, Send for the police.
Oh, now.
Before we find out what the police discover, men, once you get bald, there's nothing you can do about it. But it's never too early to make the most of the hair you've got. That's why I urge you to try Kreml Hair Tonic. Kreml contains very special hair grooming ingredients which have never been duplicated in any other hair tonic. Kreml keeps the hair in place longer, always looking so neat and well-groomed, never greasy or sticky. But this highly specialized hair tonic does lots more than just keep the hair looking handsome. A quick massage with Kreml helps stimulate circulation right in the surface of the scalp, leaving your scalp feeling so alive, so invigorated. At the same time, Kreml removes loose dandruff and has a fine lubricating effect on a dry scalp. And if your hair is dry and breaks and falls, Kreml actually helps condition the hair in that it leaves it feeling so much softer, more pliable. Men, I'm sure you'll enjoy the way Kreml always feels so clean on your scalp, looks so clean on your hair, and has such a clean odor. How it helps give you such a handsome, clean-cut appearance. Buy a bottle at any drug counter. Kreml, Kreml Hair Tonic. Well, Dr. Watson, I begin to see what you mean about that withered sprig of parsley. But I still don't understand what it had to do with the death of the old lady.
Oh, more did I, Mr. Bell, at the time, but Sherlock Holmes soon explained it to me. As soon as the family had left the dining room and the police had been sent for, Holmes and I stood together in that room of death, examining the dining room table.
Yes, Watson. I'm certain that she was poisoned before our eyes.
But how, Holmes?
You'll admit that in her condition a double dose of digitalis would have been fatal?
Possibly, yes, but she didn't have an overdose. I gave her some before we came into lunch and told her not to take her usual dose at the table. And she didn't take it.
Not consciously, Watson, but I'm convinced that she received another dose in her food.
How? She didn't eat the roast lamb that the rest of us had. She simply had 2 lightly boiled eggs. She cracked them open herself. They couldn't have been poisoned.
But she put butter in her eggs, large quantities of butter.
We all ate butter from the same dish, Holmes.
True. But once again, I ask you to observe the significant fact. The depth to which the parsley has sunk in the butter.
But the parsley hasn't sunk perceptibly at all.
That, my dear Watson, is the significant fact.
Oh, beg your pardon, sir. Lizzie said as how you thought something was wrong with the lunch. I'm the cook.
Something was very wrong with the lunch, my good woman.
Oh, I'm sorry. And I hear as how Mrs. Abernathy has been took with another of her spells.
Yes, she has. Tell me, was this table laid for lunch at 1 o'clock?
Yes, sir, it was. But you didn't come in till half an hour later.
While Mrs. Abernathy's attack delayed us in the drawing room, did anyone come through the kitchen into this room?
No, sir. Lizzie and me would have seen them if they had.
And when you set the table, you placed this butter here?
Yes, sir.
As you see, it's garnished with parsley. Did you do that?
No, sir, I didn't. That's funny. Who could have put that on there?
Joe Holmes, you're right.
But the roast of lamb was garnished with parsley, wasn't it?
Yes, sir, it was.
Splendid. I'm much obliged to you.
I hope the mistress finds better soon, sir.
Watson, I'm going to take that butter to the village, chemist shop, and have it analyzed. While I'm doing that, I want you to conduct an experiment of your own.
What do you want me to do?
Obtain a fresh quantity of butter from the kitchen. Place a sprig of parsley on top of it, and see how far in half an hour it sinks in.
Ridiculous way of spending my time, I must say.
Nevertheless, Watson, I think the experiment may give us the vital clue to the murder.
Well, Holmes, and what did you find out at the chemist?
It was as I suspected, Watson. The butter was thoroughly impregnated with digitalis.
And yet we all ate some of it.
True. It would not produce any effect on a normally healthy person. In the case of Mrs. Abernathy, however, 2 doses in quick succession were fatal.
Great Scott.
What was the result of your experiment, old chap?
Well, in half an hour on a blazing hot day like this, parsley sinks quite noticeably into the butter.
Therefore, it was placed there shortly before we came in late to lunch, not when the table was set.
But what was the motive?
The butter had been shaped by a mold. It was patterned on the top. The murderer used a hypodermic needle to inject the digitalis, and he had to hide the holes made by the needle. So he took the parsley from the roast and placed it on the butter.
Who had the opportunity?
That's what we have to find out. Have the police arrived?
Yes, there's a Sergeant Jenkins in charge. He's out there in the kitchen questioning the servants.
Then let's join forces. A murderer's in this house, Watson. Between us, we've got to catch him.
Mr. Holmes, I've questioned everybody. The cook, Martha, says nobody came in through the kitchen when lunch was waiting on the table.
And yet we know somebody did, Sergeant.
Well, perhaps they came through the window.
I checked that too, sir. The gardener was working in the rhododendron bed outside. He said no one went in that way.
And the only other entrance to the dining room was the door leading into the library.
Oh, I checked on that one too, Mr. Holmes. Mr. John Abernathy and his brother Ernest were playing a game of chess there. They swore that no one went through that door.
Well, it looks as if no one could have tampered with the butter.
Whereas we know they did. Sergeant Jenkins, you've been very thorough in your examinations. But one of these witnesses is lying. We must talk to them again. Martha, when you said no one came through your kitchen and went into the dining room, you meant no member of the family, didn't you?
That's right, sir.
If it had been one of the other domestics, Lizzie, for example, you wouldn't have noticed it?
No, you mention it, sir. Lizzie did go in just before they came into lunch.
Lizzie did, but...
Quite, Watson. Sergeant, please ask Mr. Ernest Abernathy to step in here for a moment.
Yes, Mr. Holmes, Lizzie did go through the library door, but I can't see that fact as of much importance.
Possibly you can't. And yet I assure you my question was not an idle one. Was Lizzie carrying anything, do you recall?
I really didn't notice. I'm afraid I find the problems of chess, even with Brother John as an opponent, more interesting than the perambulations of the worthy Lizzie.
Lizzie.
Yes, sir?
You did go into the room just before lunch?
Yes, sir. I remember that I'd forgot to put the claret out, so it would be room temperature. Mr. Ernest is most particular about that.
Thank you, Lizzie. You may go.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Holmes, do you think she did it?
Surely there's no doubt of it in your mind now, is there?
Well, there is in mine, Mr. Holmes, and no mistake.
And yet the case is solved, Sergeant. Let's go into the drawing room and I'll introduce you to our murderer. And so, ladies and gentlemen, you can all see now how the murder was committed.
But by Lizzie? But that doesn't seem possible, Mr. Holmes. What motive would she have?
Oh, I could understand her motive. Mother's been an absolute tyrant with her.
I find it hard to believe that with her addle-pated mentality, she'd have the imagination to think of such a plot.
Oh, no, Gareth. The man responsible for this murder is you.
Uncle Gareth!
This is ridiculous.
I did not say the murderer. I said the man responsible.
But Holmes, what on earth are you driving at?
Gareth, by his example in finding a job and going abroad, caused one of his other relatives to become disgusted with the life of a parasite. That person decided to go beyond such petty devices as stealing silver and to turn to murder.
And Abernathy commit murder? I say, really.
A remarkably brilliant observation.
Which one is it, Holmes?
Surely that's obvious. Two witnesses, the cook and Ernest, at first swore no one had entered the dining room. Then, when I asked a question based on one of the elementary flaws of direct evidence, each admitted that Lizzie had entered.
Lizzie herself admitted it, Mr. Holmes.
Very true. She told us in detail how she had entered the dining room once. But the witnesses had her entering twice. The cook saw her come through the kitchen door, and you, Ernest, admitted that she had passed you through the library door. Someone else had realized that same flaw of evidence, that no employer really notices the actions of a servant. Someone else had entered that room in the maid's uniform. And who is the only suspect who could have done that?
By George, Rose Abernathy.
The shy and retiring Rose?
Yes, I killed Granny. When Dr. Watson said that Grandmother might live another 20 years, I saw that I'd never get away from here.
Well, you're getting away from here now, miss. I'm taking you over to the station.
I don't care. I'd be an old maid.
And I warn you that anything you say may be used in evidence against you.
I killed...
What a shocking case. I'm glad we're headed back to our hotel and never have to see that Abernathy family again.
We'll have to make a brief appearance at the trial of the girl, I'm afraid.
I still find it hard to believe that quiet, shy little thing was capable of conceiving such a devilish murder.
Solitude, unhappiness, and the companionship of an evil, maladjusted family and a tyrannical grandmother breed dark fancies, Watson.
She dressed up in a maid's uniform, convinced that no one would give her a second glance, and then, having poisoned the butter, returned, changed her dress, and sat down at the luncheon table.
Precisely. Well, Watson, this has been an unsavory case, but it points a moral. A moral that I hope you, as my self-appointed biographer, will profit by.
And what moral is that?
The extreme importance of observing details. Miss Abernathy would not now be on her way to a prison cell if I hadn't noticed one vital clue. The depth to which the parsley had sunk in the butter.
Just a moment, Dr. Watson will be back to tell us something about next week's story. Girls, have you noticed how men can't help but admire the bright, shimmering highlights in a woman's hair? Then why not follow the advice of the famous $1 Million Powers models? Girls noted for their glossy, bright hair.
Powers models wash their hair with Kreml shampoo. This amazingly beautifying Kreml shampoo actually glamour bathes each tiny strand of hair and uncovers all its natural, radiant luster.
Yes, and Kreml shampoo never dries the hair. In fact, it has a beneficial oil base which helps keep the hair from becoming dry or brittle.
Its luxurious active foam penetrates right to the scalp and removes all loose dandruff as well as the dirt.
So, ladies, buy a bottle of Kreml shampoo at any drug counter. See how easy it is to glamour bathe your hair to a vision of tantalizing loveliness. Kreml. Kreml shampoo. Now, Dr. Watson, what about next week?
Well, next week I think I'll tell you about the singular affair of the Coptic compass.
The Coptic compass? Sounds intriguing, Dr. Watson.
Sherlock Holmes found it so, Mr. Bell. The adventure started one afternoon when Holmes and I, returning to our Baker Street rooms, found, lying in the middle of our floor, an unclothed corpse.
Tonight's new Sherlock Holmes adventure was suggested by an incident in Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's story, The Six Napoleons. Nigel Bruce appeared by permission of California Pictures, Tom Conway through the courtesy of Eagle Lion Pictures. This is Joseph Bell speaking for Kreml Hair Tonic and Kreml Shampoo, and inviting you to be with us next week at this same time, when Dr. Watson will tell us about the singular affair of the Coptic compass. This is ABC, the American Broadcasting Company.
Welcome back. What a delightful family that was. I definitely appreciated the moment of Watson's deduction, which I guess was just a diagnosis based on information provided. Well, we got a couple listener interactions really quick. First, Paul emails, I really enjoy your website and downloads. Nice walking in the snow while listening to Nero Wolfe and Sherlock Holmes. Thanks, Paul. And also, John gave us a very nice tip. Thank you so much. It says, thank you for providing such entertaining podcast. And you can make a tip, leave a donation to the show at greatdetectives.net. All right, well, that'll do it for now. Well, before we do get started with the show, I do want to briefly let you know about JohnnyDollarAir.com. You know, I hope wherever you happen to travel during the new year, that you have a safe trip and a great time. I also hope you find a great deal, and that's why I encourage you to go to JohnnyDollarAir.com. JohnnyDollarAir.com is powered by Priceline, so you have the option of either naming your own price or choosing from a lot of great published specials. Plus, your purchase helps support the great detectives of old-time radio. So for all your travel needs, remember JohnnyDollarAir.com. Now for today's episode of yours truly, Johnny Dollar, the Protocol Matter.
So, Brian, as Johnny Dollar.
Bob Redden, Johnny.
Oh, yeah, Bob. What's this? You checking to see if I'm stalling on your case?
Oh, nothing like that, Johnny.
Well, in a way, I am. I traced one of the beneficiaries to Chicago, and I've been waiting all morning for a wire on it.
We want you to drop the case.
What? You capitulating?
This is a bad week for Great Eastern. We want you to take another one. We carry a theft policy on a West Coast loan company. 3 of the branches in San Francisco were just robbed.
Uh-oh. When?
Just a matter of hours ago.
You mean all of them?
Yeah, all this morning. There was one other that wasn't ours. I got a phone call. I haven't even figured the loss yet, but it'll be way up. We'd like you to get right on it.
Sure, Bob. I'll get a plane this evening.
Edmund O'Brien in another adventure of the man with the action-packed expense account, America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Expense account submitted by Special Investigator Johnny Dollar to the Great Eastern Insurance Company, Hartford, Connecticut. The following is an accounting of expenditures during my investigation of the Porter Cole matter. Expense account item 1, $180 airfare and incidentals between Hartford and San Francisco, California. At 11, after I'd found a hotel room breakfast, I cabbed to police headquarters, where I was shown to robbery detail and the office of a harried Lieutenant Clark.
I'm not making excuses. They put us off balance, that's all. We got the call from the place on Market Street at 9:15 yesterday morning, just a few minutes after they'd opened. While we were down there, the call came in from the Mission District. Same loan company, different branch. Then, not 40 minutes later, the other company was here.
Quite an operation. They hit the fourth one at 5 minutes of 11.
I tell you, we had more officers on the streets than there were civilians. There hasn't been as much confusion since the quake and fire of 1906. And look here.
This is your list of witnesses?
Yeah. You can see only about 35 out of the 53 names were employees of these loan companies. They're the ones we're sure saw this bunch.
What did they give you?
You know how it goes. You have to make a sort of composite of the statements. Seems this bunch would come in, from 8 to 10 of them, all armed. 2 would take care of any customers that happened to be in the waiting room, kick them to the floor face down, and the rest would cover the office for us and knock over the cashier.
What kind of disguises?
Well, some say none. Others think they saw makeup. Stage makeup, you know, lines and the stuff to change the shape of the nose and so on. I'll go along with that.
Yeah, there'd be some kind of disguise.
What I got on the rest of their physical descriptions doesn't exactly hurt, but it doesn't help any either.
Not even ages? What about voices?
Only one did the talking in a high voice. Falsetto, not a woman.
Pretty well planned job, wasn't it?
4 in the space of 2 hours for $47,000? I don't say it was well planned. No prints, nobody spotted any cars, but they must have used at least 2, probably with a driver for each.
What did the rest of these witnesses see?
Oh, some of them are crank. Some of them claim they saw the bunch come out of the buildings but didn't think anything about it until the news began to break on the robberies and so on. You know witnesses.
Beginning to wish they'd sent another boy from Hartford.
I wish I'd stayed in homicide. With the killing, you've at least got a stiff to work from. Yes? No, I don't want to talk to him. Tell him I'm grilling a hot suspect in Daly City. What a comedian.
Who's that?
The manager of that outfit you're interested in. Wants to know if I'm doing anything. Port of Call Loan Company.
That's a great name.
Do you know what their motto is?
Yeah, I saw it.
When financial seas are troubled, make us your port of call. Now tell me, what self-respecting grifter could pass up an invitation like that?
San Francisco is a city of bridges with few other exits. All of these had been covered in less than an hour after the first robbery report had been phoned in. To double-check, the adjoining counties had been alerted and were swarming with men. San Francisco itself was being combed for known criminals. That left little for me to do but hang around robbery detail and wait for developments. Lieutenant Clark had been on the phone for half the afternoon, and I was in his office at 5 when it rang again.
Yes? Well, how are you, Bruce? Well, I could use something. What is it? How would that fit? Oh. Good, I do. Well, thanks a lot, Bruce. Well, it'll be a change of scenery anyway.
Something up?
That was missing persons. A woman reported her husband missing since sometime yesterday. It's a cab driver.
That's a possibility, isn't it?
I never gave it a thought. Why is it you always connect private cars to jobs like this?
It's natural to pass up cabs. They're usually a close check kept on them.
Well, we'll see. She's on her way down. I'd like to have you see her, too.
Yeah, sure.
This is Mrs. Geyer, Lieutenant Clark. I've gotten her report and told her you wanted to talk to her.
Well, good. Thanks, Bruce.
What do you want to talk to me for? You hasn't done nothing wrong, has he?
Not that we know of, Mrs. Geyer.
You wouldn't do nothing wrong. You never has. Who are you?
I'm not a policeman, if that's what you mean, Mrs. Geyer.
What are you doing here? I don't understand this.
Well, I'm interested in another case that Lieutenant Clark is working on. Do you think something happened to your husband? That he had an accident in his cab? Something like that?
He didn't have an accident. His company would have known.
What company's that?
Peerless. It's a new one.
Didn't they know he was missing?
How would they know?
Didn't he check his cab in with the company?
No, it don't work that way. He owes his old cab. Just an agreement about money and gas and the license, and then I don't understand it because Joe never talks about business. Why are you asking me these questions?
Don't you read the papers, Mrs. Geyer?
No, I don't have time with 3 kids in a room to take care of. What if I did read them? Does it say they found Joe dead someplace?
Nothing like that, Mrs. Geyer. I'm sorry I mentioned it.
What do they say? I got a right to know. I'll buy a paper for the streetcar on the way home anyway.
There were 4 robberies yesterday, big ones. None of the witnesses saw the cars the men got away in. Maybe they wouldn't notice a taxi.
You saying you think Joe was in on it?
Not necessarily, no.
Police have to ask questions like that, Mrs. Geyer.
He wouldn't do nothing wrong like that. Even if he did, I'd know about it. And do you think I'd come down here like this?
Of course not.
Doesn't your husband ever stay away from home this long?
No, not without calling me from someplace. That's why I got to worrying. They never called at all yesterday.
What time did he leave yesterday morning?
I told the other cop that.
Why don't you tell us?
It was right before 8.
I think Mrs. Geyer can go now, don't you, Mr. Dollar?
I think she should. Go home and don't worry, Mrs. Geyer. We'll find your husband.
He's got to come back. I don't know how I'll match with the kids if he don't.
We'll find him. You know the way out, don't you?
Yeah, this way?
That's right. Then down the corridor.
What do you think?
I don't know. That's why I had to try the robberies out on her. She could have been here to put the finger on the husband who double-crossed her. Seemed to be sure he hadn't had an accident.
Yeah, that's right.
There must be a reason all those witnesses didn't see a private car.
That figures, too.
I'll put a tail on her right now.
A phone call to the Peerless Cab Company got the number and description of Joe Geyer's cab, and a police tracer was put out on that. I think the harried lieutenant beamed a little too graciously when I asked permission to check the other Peerless drivers myself. But I did, 75 of them. Only one hadn't been heard from in the past 28 or 9 hours. Paul Landini, with an address on Turk Street, an apartment house whose manager boarded some of the tenants, among them Landini.
Who knows about Paul ever? He wasn't here for the meal last night, but what is that?
Did he live alone here?
Yes.
I take it you mean he was off and away from home at dinner time.
He had personality. He often goes someplace else to eat.
Do you know if he came home at all last night?
My tenants live their own lives. I don't run a girls' school here.
Did you show me his apartment?
Why should I?
I told you it might be very important.
You didn't tell me what you mean.
He might even be dead.
Oh, not Paul. Why do you want to look in his apartment?
I don't expect to find him there, but there's a chance of finding something else.
What?
I don't know. I told you this was police business. You want to cooperate or don't you?
Oh, sure I do. I'll take you up.
I didn't find even a trace of a lead in Landini's apartment. Lieutenant Clark, when I talked to him, had the same report to make on his tale of Mrs. Joe Geyer. By then, it was time to have a late dinner and go to bed, which is what I did. The next morning, the 2 missing drivers and their cabs still had not been found. The police report on Mrs. Geyer hadn't offered anything. The $47,000 in stolen funds could have been that many miles away from San Francisco. Through the morning and early afternoon, a dozen general suspects were questioned and released. And then, sometime after 3, the body of a man was found floating in a slough in the upper reaches of the bay. He fitted the description of Joe Geyer, and an hour or so later, his wife arrived to make identification.
Mrs. Geyer, could you swear that this body is that of your husband, Joseph Geyer?
No. No, it's not Joe.
Mrs. Geyer, he fits your description of your husband.
Okay, it's not Joe.
You sure you aren't holding anything back from us?
Yeah, I'm sure it's not Joe. I'd know my own husband, wouldn't I?
Yes, you would, Mrs. Geyer.
My husband was dead, and this was him. I'd tell you, wouldn't I?
I hope so. I think you would.
Why wouldn't I? It's not Joe. I don't know who it is. I never saw him in my whole life, and I can prove it. I swear it, I never saw this man in my whole life.
We will return you to the second act of yours truly, Johnny Dollar, in just a moment. There's one married couple you can always depend on for fun on Saturday evenings, and to invite them over is as easy as staying tuned to CBS. They're Lucille Ball and that man she calls my favorite husband. And a nice thing about them is you don't have to get involved in the strange predicaments they get into. All you have to do is sit back and laugh at the results. How's for asking them in this evening? Lucille Ball and my favorite husband will be waiting on most of these same CBS stations. Now, with our star, Edmund O'Brien, we return you to the second act of yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Mrs. Geyer was released not because we believed in her lack of identification, but because we thought there were better ways to approach her than hard police questioning. I arrived at her small frame house not long after she had.
What do you want?
I thought I'd better come and see you.
You can't enter.
I want to help you if I can.
If I need any help from you, I don't need any. Go away.
Wait a minute.
Get your foot out. You got no right to do this.
Now, wait a minute. There are other ways to identify that body. Then you'll be in trouble, won't you?
I don't care. It wasn't Joe.
Open the door, Mrs. Geyer.
You can't come in.
Why did you get so upset if it wasn't your husband? You cried.
I couldn't help. Never saw a dead body before. I went to pieces thinking, what if it had been Joe?
You know, the police think you're lying.
I am not. Why should I? Joe hasn't done nothing wrong, and I haven't neither. Now go away and leave me alone. I got ironing to do.
When you've been in that business as long as I have, you learn to study people.
Now, that's fine. This is Mr. Dollar, the man I mentioned from the insurance company.
Oh, yes. Well, how do you do, sir?
This is Mr. Prince, the cashier at the Port of Call office in the Mission.
No. Oh, it's nice to know you, Mr. Prince.
Thank you.
He looked at that body, and he seems to be fairly sure that it's the one who did the talking during the robbery at his place.
I'm sure it is.
I hope you're right.
Oh, of course. He did look different with that makeup, his nose and his cheekbones.
But you're still sure?
Yes, I am. I've been with the Port of Call for almost 10 years. And as I was telling Lieutenant Clark, when you've been in the loan business as long as that, you learn to study people.
I suppose you would.
You meet so many, and while they're talking about the loan they want, you sort of unconsciously study them to try and find out how much truth they're telling. But, I remember that man, no makeup or no. Yes.
What in particular do you remember?
Oh, a lot of things. He walked right up to me, you know. I remember his eyes and his ears, and I remember his hands. They were miniature. And he wore a ring on his big finger left.
There's polish on the nails, all right. Didn't have a ring when he was brought in, but there's the mark of one, and its third finger left.
I wish there were more witnesses like you.
Well, thank you.
Thanks very much for coming down, Mr. Prince.
Well, that's quite all right.
And I hope we don't have to trouble you again.
Well, there's no trouble at all, Lieutenant. I'll be glad to be of service to you. Good day.
Good day,
Goodbye,
Mr. Prince.
Well, it looks like we've got that much anyway, Dollar. Run quite a few of the loan company people past the body, and almost half thought he was the one, the falsetto.
Well, that's something, but dead men don't answer many questions.
I've noticed that. I understand Mrs. Geyer didn't answer many either.
Well, how did you... Oh, you still got men on it, huh?
Yeah, I haven't been able to spare any relief, so that pair I assigned yesterday's been on the plant day and night. So when somebody finally showed up, they thought they'd broken the case. They didn't know you.
She wouldn't let you in, and she didn't change her story.
We'll check it. We've got a man from the cab company coming down.
Lieutenant, didn't she say that she had a roomer yesterday? Remember, she asked if she'd read the paper, and she said
by that time I'd asked a few thousand questions.
She did. She said she didn't have time to read the paper with 3 kids and a roomer to take care of.
I think I remember that.
Well, it's something we should check. Your men say that outside of me, nobody has shown up at her house, huh? Even staying out last night, you'd think this room would come back sometime for clothes or something.
We'll try it. Bruce, send 2 plainclothesmen out to the Geyer home on 4th Avenue and talk to the neighbors on each side. I need somebody who knows the Geyer's room by sight. I want them to look at a body.
I guess she's home.
Which one is it?
One with the porch light.
Sure turning into a nice night.
Yeah.
7 o'clock?
Huh? Oh, Richard.
What are you doing out here, sir?
I'm going to talk to the woman.
Note for me relief?
I'll have a relief out here in an hour. 9 o'clock. That's a promise. Sorry about the rain.
Yes.
I'm afraid you'll have to let us in this time, Mrs. Guy.
What are you talking about?
This is a warrant. We're here legally. I want you to tell me the truth. When did you last see the man who rooms here?
I don't know. I don't remember.
That isn't the truth. You saw him this afternoon.
You saw him at the morgue and you didn't tell us who he was. Why not?
Don't you wake up my kids.
Answer my questions, Mrs. Geyer.
I was afraid to tell you.
Why were you afraid?
Because with Joe gone like this, I thought something happened. I know I should have told you, but I couldn't. He's my husband.
What were you afraid had happened?
Joe and me argued sometimes about Mr. Grace.
Grace? What's his first name?
I thought you knew about him.
The neighbors identified his body, but they couldn't remember his name.
His name was Ted Grace.
Your husband was jealous of Grace, Mrs. Geyer?
We argued sometimes. He was a salesman, and some weeks he'd have a lot of money, and I told Joe he ought to sell his cab and be a salesman, too. He got the wrong idea and thought I was falling for Mr. Grace. I wasn't. And I could never make him believe me all the way.
Why did he let Grace live here if he felt that way?
He needed the money.
Do you think your husband killed Grace?
I don't know. I was afraid to tell you. I knew Mr. Grace for fear he did.
That's what happened. He didn't kill him out of jealousy. Grace was mixed up in those robberies I told you about. Do you remember?
I got the newspapers.
That's what we're here to clear up. We want you to tell us everything you know about Grace.
I never talked to him much. How do you know he was mixed up in it?
You'll have to take our word for that. Come on, you must know something about him. How long has he been living here?
About 6 months.
You know where he came from?
He never said.
He must have had some friends. Didn't anybody come to see him?
No.
You have a telephone. Did anybody ever phone him?
Yeah, a man used to call him.
The same one all the time?
Yes.
Must have given you his name sometime.
No, he didn't.
Did he ever call while Ted Grace was gone?
Yeah, once in a while.
What then? Didn't Grace leave a number or someplace where he could be reached?
Usually a place called a Furlong over on Fulton.
Why didn't you tell us that? Why do we have to drag these things out of you? What else are you holding back from us?
Nothing. I just can't think. I just can't think of anything, but where's Joe and why don't he come back?
Wasn't there anything different the morning he left?
No, nothing.
Was Grace here at that time?
He left too.
About the same time?
Right after. Joe's mixed up in those robberies. It's my fault because I talked so much about money. Well, he can hate me for that, but what about the kids? He can't leave them for me to take care of alone, can he?
You better take a look at Grace's room, don't you think, Lieutenant?
Which one is it, Mrs. Geyer?
Ted Grace's effects told a lot more about him than his landlady had. A drawer full of racing forms made it appear that the man who phoned had probably been a bookie. Because of Ted Grace's ties and shirts, an array of cheap men's toiletries painted a pretty good picture of the character he'd been. But the contents of the wastepaper basket made him out the mastermind of the whole series of robberies. Shredded paper. We didn't try to assemble all the pieces there, but we fished through enough to learn they'd been applications for loans from the victim companies.
Made out while he cased the offices. Look at the blank side.
Yeah, the floor plans drawn out. Hey, look here, a name, Tony. Positions, movements were marked down, too.
Here's another name, Mark.
Yeah.
Let's not waste any more time here. I'll take them down to headquarters, get somebody to paste them up.
I guess we've covered the place all right. Pretty obvious he expected to come back here, though.
Yeah. Well, I have a feeling the rest of them might still be in the city.
Me, too. I think that might have been the plan.
Going now?
Yeah, we'll go.
Unless you have something more to tell us.
I don't know any more to tell you. All this big mess, and I don't understand any of it. I don't know what it's all about.
Well, we're sorry it happened. I hope it'll turn out all right for you. Good night, Miss Guy.
Lieutenant Clark.
Yes, Pritchard.
The radio car stopped by with a message for you. But I didn't want to come in with a woman there. Her husband's dead. So's the other driver, Landini.
Where were they found?
In that cab's in the vacant garage out toward the beach.
Who's on it?
Lieutenant McMillan.
All right, I'll contact him.
And don't forget our receipts.
I won't. Well, there goes Geyer and Landini.
Elimination for more profit?
That or cutting the link between the rest of the bunch and the only tangible things we had, the cabs.
Meant to be. Hey, if you want to drop me at that bar she mentioned, the Furlong, I'll see what I can pick up there.
Sure, if you want to. I'll stay in my office while I hear from you.
Good evening, sir.
Hi. I guess a rye and soda.
Oh, you must be an Easterner. I don't get many calls for rye except from them.
Well, that's almost right. I transplanted myself out here. Say, I'm looking for a guy I think you know, Ted Grace. Has he been in tonight?
Who?
Ted Grace. I understand he's in here quite a bit.
Where till I find that rye bottle? This all right?
Yeah, it's fine.
You see, I'm not the regular bartender. I don't know your friend, by name, anyway.
Thanks. That's all right.
Thanks.
Hey, what about a couple of guys Ted knows, then? One named Mark, the other's Tony something.
No, guess I can't help you. I usually work a place down on Gary. I don't know this one very well.
Oh, it's not important. I'll look around, maybe come back. See you later.
Yeah. Good night.
Hey, Tony, send over another Scotch and Sylvester, will you? Hey, Tony, over here, it's me.
It was hard not to turn around, or at least stop moving, but I managed to walk out as if I hadn't heard, turn down the sidewalk for a count of 5, and then back to the window. Tony was forgetting his customers. He was heading towards the rear of the room. When he got there, he disappeared into a phone booth. I've heard that a lot of cases are broken through a stroke of luck, but it very seldom happens to me. My own phone call from a gas station brought Lieutenant Clark and an extra squad car to the Furlong Bar in less than 20 minutes. The place was cleared of people, and Tony stood alone behind the bar, giving away his guilt by his expression and the apron he kept twisting in his hand.
Leave your apron alone.
What is all this?
Who did you phone right after I left?
Holmes, say I'd be late.
That's not true. The call was traced.
You're crazy. How could you trace it?
If you were calling home, why should you care if it was traced or not? Now, who did you call?
I can make a phone call if I want to, can't I?
That isn't the question. What makes you so nervous?
You guys busting in like this. What do you expect?
Find a guy named Tony. What's your last name, Tony?
Cullen.
That's what I came here for, too, Tony. When we found him, all we were going to do was ask him to tell us where he was the other morning while those loan company officers were being knocked over. And if he couldn't, we were going to see him booked for 3 killings. Ted Grace and Joe Gaia and Paul Landini.
I don't know what you're talking about. You're bluffing, but you're bluffing the wrong guy.
I'm glad to hear that. We wouldn't want to see an innocent man booked for something he didn't do. So let's clear it up. How do we start proving where you were between 9 and about 11 the other morning?
Come on, where were you?
I was home asleep.
And a lot of people must hate you.
Who?
The people who said they saw you leave your place about 8 o'clock.
What's the use? I don't know if you're bluffing or not.
We aren't. In Grace's room, we found the floor plans of all those officers with the names of all of you. He talked to Joe Gaia's wife. She knew about you and Mark.
You just made a confession. Do you want to take the whole rap yourself?
No. If I'd known there was going to be any killing, I wouldn't have got mixed up in it. When there was, I knew the whole thing would blow up.
Who did the killing?
There were 3 of them. Harvey Shute, Vic Lincoln, and Neil White. I'm not sure which one did it.
Who are they?
I don't know. They got out of prison someplace in the East about 6 months ago. We met them and got running around with them. We'd been playing the horses, not doing so well. And they said if we got a big stake, they knew how to make a killing. That's the way it started.
Who's we, Tony?
My friends, Mark Rose and Leo Barrett, Ted Grace.
Is that all?
Giving you my friends, that's enough, isn't it?
What about Joe Gaia?
No, they just called him to get his cab to use instead of cars. He wasn't in it.
That was Ted Grace's idea.
I guess so. The smart guy.
You were all pretty smart.
What about Landini?
He was called, too. I don't know what happened. They went crazy after we got the money. They were like different people, and I didn't know. Could have killed all of us if we crossed them.
Were they on narcotics?
I don't know much about that, but they could have been.
Where are they?
Might as well tell you, I guess. The whole thing is blown wide open. They're staying in the Metropolitan Auto Court out on Bayshore Highway.
Which cabin?
Second one on the right.
Where's the money?
We split it before we separated. You could have my share. I wish you would buy back the last few days.
Come on, Tony. I'll send you down to the station.
2 more squad cars had been added by the time we got started. No trouble was expected or had picking up the other two San Francisco men, Mark Rose and Leo Barrett. But at the Metropolitan Auto Court, where the three ex-convicts were staying, trouble was expected.
Well, I think that's about the best we can do. Two exits. We've got both of them covered.
The other people who might be staying here?
Well, they'll be all right, even if there's firing, as long as we can keep these Canadians inside, or at least just trying to get out.
That's your case.
We'll have to try to it anyway. I'll go wake them up. If this gale hasn't already.
Now, don't be a hero.
You in there. Open up. I'm a police officer. Lieutenant Clark.
Lieutenant!
I shot the lieutenant. Cover me on the door, Hopkins.
Watch the window! Get down, Sergeant! When it was finished, one of them was alive. The other two in the cabin were ripped to pieces. But that and the recovery of the money hardly paid for the loss of Lieutenant Clark, who died before he reached the hospital. Expense account item 2, $75.30, miscellaneous in San Francisco. Item 3, same as item 1, transportation back to Hartford. Expense account total, $450.60. Remarks? It probably isn't important, but there's an odd commentary to this. The gunfight and Lieutenant Clark's death made only a column on page 2 of the morning paper. The storm he died in grabbed the page 1 headlines. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, stars Edmund O'Brien in the title role and is written by Gil Dowd with music by Wilbur Hatch. Edmund O'Brien's latest picture is a Paramount Pictures production, Warpath. Featured in tonight's cast were Howard McNear, Ed Begley, Hy Averback, Jim Nusser, Virginia Gregg, and Janet Scott. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, is produced and directed by Jaime Del Valle. This is Dick Cutting, inviting you to join us next week at the same time when Edmund O'Brien returns as...
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
You can sing it again this evening on CBS, and if Dan Seymour calls you, maybe you can sing it out the name of the fabulous Phantom and win $5,000 in cold, hard cash, plus $10,000 more in fine prizes. Worth it? You bet it is. For Sing It Again also brings you a whole hour of grand musical fun as you listen to Alan Dale, Judy Lynn, Bob Howard, the Riddlers, and Ray Bloch's orchestra. Sing It Again comes to you every Saturday evening on most of these same CBS stations. Sing it again this evening, won't you? And now, stay tuned for Vaughn Monroe's Caravan, which follows immediately on most of these same CBS stations. This is CBS, where everyone laughs at Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy every Sunday night. The Columbia Broadcasting System.
Welcome back. Well, I think Johnny Dollar has an addendum to that famous saying, when in Rome, do as the Romans. When in California, do as Joe Friday. This had very much a sort of dragnet feel about it in a lot of ways. And there are a few episodes like this where Johnny Dollar sticks with the police, and it's less like a hard-boiled private detective adventure and a little bit more like a police procedural. And this, I think, is something that they did try actively at CBS during the latter part of the O'Brien years, as well as the John Lunn years, where they do several of these episodes. In this particular one, I thought they did fairly well. Of course, we did miss a few episodes in between the Leland Broderick matter and the Port of Call matter. Those were the Montevideo matter, the Rudy Valentine matter, and the Adolf Shulman matter. The Montevideo matter was actually rerun 2 additional times. They used that same script. However, none of the performances of that show are available. We have a comment from Heidi, who kind of like me, didn't care as much for the Jackie Cleaver matter that we played 2 weeks ago. I, too, thought this was a rather disappointing episode. Johnny was just apathetic, even in regards to murder. And that's, I think, a pretty keen observation. Because in that particular case, we didn't have a whole lot of reason to be sympathetic or care about what was going on with any of these people. We were basically dealing with 2 gangs of thugs trying to rub each other out. And if our hero isn't concerned with it, well, it's kind of hard for anyone else to get into that. We do have another comment, this one from Jeremy. Adam, I was catching up and listening to some of the December Johnny Dollar episodes, and a name caught my attention. Hy Abbott co-starred in several episodes. Being a longtime MASH fan, I recognized it right away. He directed several episodes and was the voice over the PA system. Keep up the good work. Thanks so much, Jeremy. There's a very interesting study in taking a look at some of the classic television actors and personalities and seeing their roles in radio. And you'll find all sorts of connections. Eddie Albert, for example, I found a radio show with him playing a jazz musician seeking revenge. So those connections always fun to find. Got a couple comments from Podcast Alley. Great adventures, my favorite mysteries, love the expense account genre. Never heard it referred to as genre, but thanks. Then Bill says, love the great detectives. My faves are Richard Diamond and yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Also love Philip Marlowe. Some excellent choices there. And then Debbie says, love these old shows. My son and I listen to them all the time. We got a comment from Jocelyn. I just cannot get enough of these shows. Seriously, I'm addicted. Hello, my name is Jocelyn, and I'm a Adam Graham old-time radio show-aholic. Well, I know it's cheesy, but true. Well, thanks, Jocelyn. And Helen says it's a lot of work out there when it comes to detective and lawyer drama. These stories are everlasting. Pretty close to it. More than 120 years after Arthur Conan Doyle started writing his Sherlock Holmes stories, The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes is the most downloaded free ebook in the Kindle store. So good mysteries can definitely endure, because we humans are quite curious. Also, I've got a nice review on iTunes, and just says, an awesome podcast. Thanks, Adam. Appreciate all the reviews and just general ratings over on iTunes. Finally, I got this email from Charlene. I love your podcast and look forward to each day's episode. It occurs to me that you might not know about the Internet Movie Database, IMDb.com. It is owned by Amazon, which is interested in selling all manner of things, including DVDs, so it is interested in giving the most information possible. I found that this site will tell you everything you ever wanted to know about a movie or any actor in it. It's a great reference. I found a lot of info about many of the stars of your radio shows. Check it out and have fun learning new stuff. Nice, and will help with cross-referencing too. Well, thanks, Charlene. I'm definitely aware of the Internet Movie Database and use it all the time. In fact, I use it when I subconsciously want to lose the rest of the day, because I will just go, wow, this is an interesting fact about this movie and this actor. Wow, what other films was this guy in? Oh, he was in that. Let me go take a look at that film. And I say, wait, how did it end up getting to be 1 o'clock in the morning? right up there with Wikipedia for that, but Charlene's definitely right. A lot of great resources. Well, that'll do it for today. Next week, we'll have our February app bonus. I think you're really going to enjoy it. Be sure to, if you've got the app or you've got the premium site, be sure to look for that next Friday. In the meantime, send your comments to box13@greatdetectives.net. Become one of our friends on Facebook, facebook.com/radiodetectives. And be sure to cast your vote once a month on Podcast Alley, podcastalley.greatdetectives.net. But from Boise, Idaho, this is your host, Adam Graham, signing off.